Blog Talk Radio.
All right, everybody. I'm Tarhaka and welcome to tonight's podcast. We're doing part two. Last night we did part one on Tarhaka, on Untaught. Now tonight we'll be dealing with part two, Untaught, about ancient Moors and Egyptians in the Americas. I'm going to lay out everything I got. I also have a #1 bestseller book here on the desk, written by a brother by the name of Horace Butler. The title of the book is When Rocks Cry Out. We're going to deal with that, and we have quite a bit of information on the Moors, and we're going to run what we got, and we're going to also deal with the ancient Egyptians in the Americas. Previously, in the past, I have made attempts to bring up information about the Moors in the Americas and the ancient Egyptians in the Americas. But this time, we're going to deal with this exclusively. So for those people, because we've got a whole new audience here that may have not ran into this kind of information. There are a lot of people that is upset about this kind of information coming out, because this goes against the grain of everything that the institutions in the United States teaches you. Once again, we'll be dealing with the following questions. Is America the oldest of the land masses on earth? Were people called Moors today the first occupants on this land? Were people called today Egyptians on this land also? What is the true ethnicity of the ancient Olmacs? We're going to deal with some more of that. Are Negroes, coloreds, blacks, Afro-Americans, African-Americans a part of the human family of nations on earth? What is an Indian? Where did the word come from? Where did the word America come from? We're going to deal with that. What kind of people on earth created the word race? In what school, college, or university is the truth about these questions taught? What is the Moorish Empire? Have there ever been Moors in Mexico? We're going to try to cover all of this. I'm going to try to cram it all into part two. But if I can't, then we will come back and do part three. However, keep in mind that the chat room is open. When y'all get up in there, if you got questions, go ahead and type them in. And y'all be courteous up in there and treat each other right. We will be converting this into a video. Throw it up on YouTube. So when you get over there, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, a thumbs down. Don't forget to comment. And go ahead and subscribe to this channel. So if you're working, some of you can't get to dealing with the broadcast right away, you can always go back as a subscriber and just click on the little red button right there on the face of the screen of the video, and that'll take you over there and you look and see what it was you missed. Right there, you'll be able to listen to it right there on YouTube. And this information will be posted also on your social networks. But without further ado, we're going to get on down into this thing, and I have some information I will be reading to you out of the book When Rocks Cry Out by Horace Butler. But the first thing I want to deal with is the Moors. And after we deal with the Moors, then we are going to deal with the ancient Egyptians in the Americas. Okay? All right. So let's get started with our first one. This is a young sister and brother. They're both Moors. And they're being, I'm not sure, I forgot whether or not this is a television broadcast, but I know I do have one heck of an interview that was televised. But they're going to be interviewed about the Moors, and they're going to give you what they got, okay? We're going to start right there, and then we'll come back and go on down to the next thing, all right? So y'all hold on a minute. First thing I got to do, I thought I had it right here. Okay, here it is now. Y'all hold on a minute. Here we go.
Happy holiday to everyone. It's 12 noon. Today's City Line is a special half-hour edition. Hi, I'm Jackie Hall.
And I'm B.T. Bentley. During this holiday season, Christians are celebrating Christ's resurrection. But there are a lot of people throughout the world who don't celebrate it. Among them are the Moorish Americans.
Who are the Moorish Americans? After coming to this continent over 10,000 years ago, how have they preserved their Islamic culture?
What kind of lifestyle do they lead, and what is their role in today's society?
Proclaiming Islamism as their divine creed, what beliefs direct their daily lives?
Join us as we answer these questions and more.
The Moorish Americans, up next on City Line.
Okay, well, my volume went.
City Line at this half-hour special edition.
We're gonna come back to this. Let me go up here and check this out.
Once again, don't wait until it's too late. Hi, I'm Tarhaka. Get out of debt now. Use what you already have at your disposal. Try living in the private for the first time in your life. Go to TarhakaDebtElimination.org. What are you going to do when the economy collapses? What are you going to do when life in the public becomes so unbearable you don't think you can survive? There is something you can do now. Gain the benefit now of using the private banking and credit available to you. Avoid the loss of your hard-earned cash, which are debt notes. Go to TarhakaDebtElimination.org. Request my free report by filling out the Contact Us form, and I will rush the report to your email box. Act now. We still have a small amount of time. TarhakaDebtElimination.org.
Happy holiday to everyone. It's 12 noon. Today's City Line is a special half-hour edition. Hi, I'm Jackie Hall.
And I'm B.T. Bentley. During this holiday season, Christians are celebrating Christ's resurrection. But there are a lot of people throughout the world who don't celebrate it. Among them are the Moorish Americans.
Who are the Moorish Americans? After coming to this continent over 10,000 years ago, how have they preserved their Islamic culture?
What kind of lifestyle do they lead, and what is their role in today's society?
Proclaiming Islamism as their divine creed, what beliefs direct their daily lives?
Join us as we answer these questions and more.
The Moorish Americans, up next on City Line. City Line at this half-hour special edition, as we said, and that's to remind you we're not as long as we normally are. Happy holiday to you.
Same to you.
We're excited about being able to share some information about Moorish Americans, and we'd like to welcome to City Line Sheikah Seabreeze Bey. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And Sheikh Ankh.
Islam.
Welcome to City Line.
Thank you.
I know many people, including myself, are asking, who are Moorish Americans? And I think that this is a fine time to begin to educate us. Could you answer?
Okay, Moorish Americans, the term itself is our nationality. It's our national identification. But due to the fact that in history, we as the people were held as slaves, the term black was put upon the term Moor, and we were once called black a Moor. And as they instituted the system of slavery, then the term was changed. Then they just dropped the Moor and began to call us black, negro, colored, darky, coon, shine, etc. And once they did this, we as the people were cut off from our illustrious history of our forefathers, because we had been in this part of the world for over 10,000 years. And being the actual natives of this land, being Moorish Americans, our flag was flying in this land. It was a red flag with a 5-pointed green star in the center.
As history goes, is there a particular spot in the world that represents your origin in terms of a locale?
This is it.
The United States or North America?
Yes. Well, the term America, it was put here, that's an Italian term, Amerigo Vespucci. And upon Columbus Columbus saying that he discovered America, the land was never lost, so there was no need to actually discover it. It was just that the Europeans were scared to venture out, but we had been traveling this coast because we had a trade route, which is the Nile, the Niger, and the Mississippi, which our forefathers dredged, and we traveled from one part to the other.
But where were the Moors? Did they start in America?
Well, we started as the ancient Moabites, and we sojourned. Joshua chased us out of the land of Moab.
And where would that have been geographically?
That would be over near Canaan, between where Egypt and Canaan sits with Saudi Arabia.
Okay, because I'm sure that most folks who have done anything in their literature remember references to the Moors and so forth, but they're speaking mainly in terms of European and North African type of locations.
Right. Because we ruled, as a matter of fact, the ancient Moroccan Empire covered from what is presently called Africa, which is also another Italian term, from Scipio Africanus. Now, the true and divine name of the landmass, and of course it was one, that's prior to the Atlantic Ocean and the sinking of the Great Atlantis. Its true and divine name of this land and what is presently called Africa is Amexium.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about what makes a Moorish American any different from other Americans. Is there something culturally that makes a distinct difference between you and non-Moors?
Well, yes, I'd like to address that by saying that the distinction between a Moorish American and the persons that are practicing Christianity or the other forms of religion in this country is simply this. When you're born with your nationality, which is your decent nature, and also comes your religion. Now, the religion of the Moors, or the Moorish Americans, is Islam. And this is that old-time religion that has been spoke about, sung about in the history of the so-called black people in this country. However, due to their ignorance, or our ignorance, in our history, we are under the impression that the old-time religion is anything but Islamism. And to give you a more specific time period, this is Old Jerusalem. See, right in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where the Liberty Bell sits, is Mount Sinai, where Moses, in ancient times, around 1490 B.C., spoke to the great God of the universe, right here in this country. So this substantiates that the Moors, even Moses was a Moor, okay, was in this land.
But now how do we account for this discrepancy? Now, obviously, there will be a lot of folks saying, wait a minute, when I took geography, all these things took place a whole ocean away.
Exactly. That's an interesting point when you say geography. What has occurred in history is that through conspiracy and distortion, the geographical map has been changed and renamed. If you look in your biblical scriptures, you'll see the 7 temples in what they call them churches, but they're in Asia. Now, we know that this part of the land is Asia, okay? It was connected by Atlantis, as the sister mentioned, and therefore, if you rename a geographical location, you disproportionately separate a people from their origin, their history, and whatsoever. And that's what happened.
Let me ask you, how do you document this? Because even in our introduction, we mentioned that you'd been in America 10,000 years. First of all, I'm sure most of us didn't even know America was 10,000 years old. How do you document it for one who's never heard this and who would like to know more, or certainly to find the written word?
Well, one, we have the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple, chapter 47, which takes you across the map. It shows you how we sojourn to this part of the world. Also, you can deal with Joshua, 24th chapter of the Bible, dealing with the other side of the flood. You can also go into the Sunday Sun, the Sun papers, and there they have an article dealing with the fact that the land here is the same as the land in Africa, and that's in June 1980.
The same in what respect?
And that it is the exact same land. They tested, the geologists tested it and said that this land and the land in Africa are one and the same.
And additionally, there's another resource material that you can consult. It's called The Miracle of the Ages by Worth Smith, published around 1937. And this primarily deals with a lot of the science that is not normally known or taught to our people, but is known by those who are in attendance of educational institutions such as Harvard, Dartmouth, etc. So that information has not been filtered down to our people. So again, we're being cut off. So there's a whole wealth of resource material which we do expound upon through a weekly program on Morgan's radio station on Sunday at 4 p.m. entitled The Light. And also we have inquiries from the public and educational institutions that ask us for resource material.
Okay, we're going to take a break now and continue, because when we come back, we'd like to begin to talk about your customs, your mores, and some of the things that you practice as Moorish Americans. Please stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment. Now here's this week's community calendar.
Hello, my name is Nancy Wilkins. Big and Beautiful Sisters invite you to attend the fashion show on Sunday, April 6th at the Franklin Street YWCA from 7 to 9:30 p.m. The show will feature fashions from Byless Corporation, Lacey's Mandarmin, Lexington Lady, and 16 Plus stores. Proceeds will benefit the movement to stop overweight prejudice. For further information, call 792-3911.
Hello, my name is Craig Sims. The Society for the Advancement of Computer Science at Morgan State University invites you to attend Computer Science Week from Monday, April the 14th through Friday the 18th. A special feature to highlight this week will be the annual Computer Club Banquet in honor of SAC's 20th anniversary, held in the McKeldin Center Ballroom on Thursday at 6:30 p.m. For further information, call 444-3512. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lisa. Southwestern High Schools offers a telephone hotline and counseling referral service open to city students from 8:30 to 5 p.m. This hotline, manned by students, offers tutoring and counseling and encourages students to report school vandalism, assault, drug, weapon, and alcohol abuse anonymously. Just call the hotline now through June at 396-0115.
If your group or organization would like to announce an event, please write us in care of City Line, WJZ-TV, Television Hill, Baltimore, Maryland, 21211, or call us for further information at 466-0013 between the hours of 9 and 5.
Welcome back to City Line. We're talking about Moorish Americans, and I guess one of the things I'm curious about is what sorts of customs are distinctive among the Moorish Americans that you practice and teach?
Okay, one of our basic customs is that the sisters do keep their heads covered at all times because that's a sign of humility. And it's always been one of our dress codes. Our diet, we have a kosher diet, and of course we don't eat pork. You deal with that in Deuteronomy, the 14th chapter, and Leviticus, the 11th chapter, dealing with our diet. Now we basically deal with history. The Moorish Science Temple, the Divine and National Movement of North America Incorporated, is a profitable organization, the only one of its kind. We're part and partial of the government, because if you go back in history, President Lincoln set up proclamations, and he also signed into law the 13th Amendment with 20 sections. In these, in order to be free, a nation has to have land, a nation has to have money, a nation has to be, we have to be restored, because if you look at our present state, the names Seabreeze, Bentley, Hall, all of these belong to our so-called slave masters. And in order for us to be actually free, they have to be restored. And this is done via the Moorish Science Temple by once. The first step is proclaiming one's nationality, which is Moorish American.
Now, is that with the, for lack of a better term, suffix at the end of Seabreeze?
Exactly, eel and day. Those are our ancient titles. We do not change our names because those names are like your check. We want to cash those in.
What about other customs? How do you practice your religion?
Well, we have our religious services that take place on Friday. That's the holy day for Muslims over the entire earth. And we give praise to Allah on Fridays. Friday morning we have services, and Friday evenings. Also, we have a Sunday school class on Sundays around 10 to 1 p.m. And it's open to the public. You don't have to be a Muslim to attend or to visit the temple. And in relationship to your question, the preservation of our culture and our heritage is fortified by the policies of President Abraham Lincoln and later developed and expounded upon by Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And what this does is, in the proclamations of emancipation, there were provisions, and there are still provisions, for naturalization. Naturalization is such a key issue that in naturalization, your ancient family name is returned. When we went up on the slave blocks, they removed our family names and affixed the slave masters' names. So also, we must be compensated. And in order to preserve your culture and to consider yourself a nation, you must be colonized in a locale. And this is what the policy of colonization infers, that we are to take possession of over 22 states in the interior region of the United States and set up our own independent sovereign government.
Separate from the United States government?
Exactly, but it will be classified as a wheel within a wheel. You know, you have a small wheel that would operate a larger wheel. And our people, speaking about all of our people of hue or complexion, have some problems with understanding that this will actually take place here in America. But if you look at the other countries in what is called Africa today, you have sovereign nations on a continent, as it is termed. The same thing will occur here in America.
Let me ask you just a few brief questions, again, because of our half-hour special today. When do you see this happening? And then I'd like to ask you about the numbers of Moorish Americans, even in our state of Maryland, and how many in the country, for instance, in the United States. But first, when do you see the sovereign state being set up?
Okay.
Well, this process will begin this year, 1986. In 1986, we will be making moves for our actual freedom. The thing is that we as a people are free. We have been set free, but we don't have actual freedom, meaning it hasn't been manifested as an independent sovereign. Everything that we presently do is always subservient to someone else, someone else's system. We have nothing of our own, and we are a nation of people, and we need to have our own in actuality, To resolve the problems of the world, we first must be restored to
When
the
do you
world.
see this becoming a complete or a completion of that sovereignty?
Well, the sovereign state being consummated or coming to completion, we would say, look around, and I'm not being prophetic, but I'm saying look around the year 1990, okay, to see a lot of changes. President Reagan, despite the disbelief in many people who hear him, has said he wants to see a working emancipation by December 1986. Key in on that. He has also used the terms part and parcel, meaning that the Moorish Science Temple is a government organization as opposed to a primarily religious.
How many Moorish Americans are there in Maryland?
Go ahead. In response to numbers.
Yeah.
Well, I can go back. In 1939, there were 9 million Moorish Americans. So then you have to take into account descendants.
In Maryland?
Now, that's not in Maryland, that's overall. Here in Maryland, there should be about 10,000 or so Moorish Americans.
10,000 plus. And that brings a key issue. The national headquarters in Washington, D.C., the Defense Department, Pentagon, etc., the Moorish National Bureau of Vital Statistics was established for the registration of all persons classified as Negro, Black, and colored to have their true nationality, Moorish American, restored to them. And this headquarters here in Baltimore, 2500 Utah Place, is the registering agent. And we go into the federal agencies and teach all of them what the responsibilities are of being a Moorish American, and they get in line to register. Just in brief, it's like you have an inheritance in the bank. In order to claim that inheritance, you must go to the bank with some identification, right? Otherwise, you don't have any claim. We here give our people their identification to make claims.
And what is drawing, or are you using to draw more people into the Moorish Temple?
Well, the week of April the 6th through the 12th, we're having an open house. And we're inviting each and everyone to come. Some of our topics are human rights versus civil rights, future guidance of the nation, teaching our children, elevating our children. Our children need to know who they are so that they can have a sense of equality.
Let's have a number for our viewers in the event they're interested in learning more about the open house and finding out more in general.
Okay, they can call 728-1861, 243-3571, and 235-6824.
And the other drawing point is the money that President Lincoln established in the First National Bank, which is a network all around the world. That's what's drawing all of our people into the fold.
And we're going into the school systems doing various lectures in the colleges and in the elementary, junior high. And we're also meeting and sending out letters to meet with the PTAs of the schools so that they can see that this policy will help.
Sheikh Seabreeze Bay, Sheikh Ankh, thank you both very much for enlightening us about the Moorish Americans and our audience.
Thanks
for being with us. We'll be back in just a minute. Please stay tuned.
City Line for our final segment of this half-hour special of City Line. And before we leave you, we'd like to remind you of the open house that the Moorish Americans are having, 2500 Utah Place, and it will take place between April 6th and April 12th. And if you'd like more information, give us a call here, and we will answer your questions.
Sounds good. I'd also like to make you aware that WJZ, along with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Maryland, will be sponsoring Baby Fest from April 12th and 13th at Festival Hall from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Saturday and 11 to 6 on Sunday. For further information, call 727-BABY.
Now, we've got a biggie going. Harold Anthony, take it away.
Yes, as most of our viewers know, the last couple of weeks we've been holding a special contest where we at City Line have joined forces with the folks over at Johnson's Products to give away some very special prizes that we have. And as with any
Okay, everybody, we back. I'd like to apologize at the outset. I wasn't having any technical difficulties in the beginning. I messed around and the plug wasn't plugged all the way up in the phone. Some kind of way I messed with that. I'll check this thing and see how it's going to go once I'll finish the broadcast. But now, let's get down in a little bit in depth on this thing. Let's deal with this paperwork situation. What kind of documentation do we have to say anything about Moorish Americans or the Moors in America? Before we get over there to Mexico, let's deal with that. And so y'all hold on a minute, and we're gonna bring that little segment in.
From the House of Representatives, the 59th Congress, Second Session, Citizenship of the United States, Expatriation, and Protection Abroad. Letter from the Secretary of State, submitting report on the subject of citizenship, expatriation, and the protection abroad. Page 459, section Morocco. Morocco. Sir, there are strictly speaking no Moroccan laws relating to the citizenship of Moorish subjects in Morocco. The fundamental laws of this non-Christian country are based entirely upon the Islamic code, no part of which treats of the subject of citizenship. Page 460. There are, however, numerous treaties and conventions between the various Christian countries and the Moorish Empire, by means of which citizenship in this country is defined. But as I understand from the above acknowledged instructions that it is not the desire of the department to call for a report upon such lines, I will therefore confine these remarks to general conditions existing which may possibly be of some use in connection with the information desired. Section 1. Citizenship in Morocco may be said to be governed by the laws pertaining to the same in other countries, with the exception that all persons residing in Morocco who cannot prove foreign citizenship or protection are considered ipso jure as Moorish subjects. 2 and 3. Moorish subjects lost their nationality only by becoming naturalized in or protected by another country having treaty relations with the Moorish Empire. It was established by the Convention of Madrid, concluded July 3rd, 1880, as follows. Article 15. Any subject of Morocco who has been naturalized in a foreign country and who shall return to Morocco shall, after having remained for a length of time equal to that which shall have been regularly necessary for him to obtain such naturalization, choose between entire submission to the laws of the empire and the obligation to quit Morocco, unless it shall be proved that his naturalization in a foreign country was obtained with the consent of the government of Morocco. Foreign naturalization heretofore acquired by subjects of Morocco according to the rules established by the laws of each country shall be continued to them as regards all its effects without any restriction. The above ruling has never yet been acted upon, and should this at any time be contemplated seriously, a large number of naturalized people, American and others, residing in Morocco would be affected thereby. 4 and 5. Residence in foreign parts does not affect the nationality of Moorish subjects, and the Moorish government has no means of protecting its subjects permanently residing in other countries, with the exception of a so-called Moorish consul at Gibraltar, and a Moorish agent at Cairo, Egypt. I am, etc., Hoffman Philip. Google United States Code, Title 22, Chapter 2, Section 141. Consular Courts. Act August 1st, 1956. Repealed Sections 141 to 143, effective upon the date which the President determined to be appropriate for the relinquishment of jurisdiction of the United States in Morocco. Jurisdiction of the United States in Morocco was relinquished by memorandum of President Eisenhower dated September 15, 1956. Notice was given to Morocco on October 6, 1956, and all pending cases were disposed of by 1960. See Bulletin of the State Department, Volume 35, colon 909, page 844. Sections 141, RS, Sections 4083, 4125, 4126, 4127, Act June 14, 1878, Chapter 193, 20 Statute 131, related to judicial authority generally of ministers and consuls of United States in China, Siam, Turkey, Morocco, Muscat, Abyssinia, Persia, and territories formerly part of the Ottoman Empire, including Egypt.
Bashar, and he also knows that North America, or North America is known as Al-Maghreb Al-Aqsa.
Of course. I know that. North America was known as Al-Maghreb Al-Aqsa, and it reported to the Sultan of Morocco. And there was a relation, this is why I needed to ask you, what's the relation between the first, colonials and the governors of Morocco, because they communicated, because on paper it was part of Greater Morocco. That's known.
That's known.
But I
and
need to know.
Bashar's from Jordan.
Yes.
Palestinian.
Yes.
And he knows
Palestinian, Jordanian, Arab, Canadian.
Fantastic.
More lives matter.
Seed, we know that we one of the seeds of Moses.
Yeah. So you're from. Where are you from again?
I was born in the island Martinique, French island.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, our descendants are from Egyptian.
Egyptian?
Yes.
Okay. So over there, they still refer to our people as Moors, correct?
Yes.
So why do you think over here in America, these same people who are brought from the same land,
yes,
when we tell them that they're Moors, why do you think that is?
Because after so many generations, if it's not passed down, you will lose. So therefore, listen good what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
A man that do not know his own identity, when he is giving one, he will simply believe.
Mm-hmm.
He will simply believe what he's not.
You're right.
So therefore, you will act as a stranger to your own identity, because you only believe on somebody else to you that.
Yeah.
So you act opposite to truly what you are.
Yeah. Do you think it's more pressure because of the economic power? I guess the European have put the laws on, so they just believe, hey, that's what it is. We're blacks now. We're blacks. Like, does that make sense? That you're just a color. You have no nationality. You have no history.
That's my point. If you was not passed down, and you have to understand, in order to I would say not a lie, because everybody lies, that is a thing of life, but how can I say that is deceived.
Mm-hmm.
To deceive one, you have to take one thing out and replace it by another.
Yeah.
So therefore,
okay.
the black is the black. So therefore, they just say they're black, but they don't realize, no, they stole your identity from you. So therefore, you might not know who you are.
Yeah.
So you just give you a color black. What the heck is black?
Yeah, because what we're trying to tell them, like, a lot of the things that are going on with our people, with the injustice, It's because of this system and what they call themselves and what they recognize themselves. They don't have any law. There's no law for black people in this country. Like, you're not even supposed to be a part of this country. So therefore, what nation are you from? You see? But like you said, when you take your history,
People will say, well, big deal, so what? Why is history important at all? History is extremely important. Imagine if I could take from each one of you as an individual everything you knew about life up to last week and just erase it. Where would you be? You'd be lost. You'd be incompetent. You wouldn't know how to plan for the future. And you do the same thing with a people. If you erase their history or you don't tell enough about their past, they also become incompetent and they can't fulfill the future. And that's why a lot of people in the black community have felt, well, how come all the dreams of the civil rights movement aren't yet fulfilled? And one reason is because this history is still suppressed. It still isn't taught. But there's been a recent discovery which is going to blow the lid off of all that, and that's what I'm going to talk about. You've had 4 of these major impacts that the black people have made to the Americas, not only before Columbus was born, but before even Spain or Italy existed. That's the kind of roots that are in this country. And by knowing that, and the more you know about it, it's an empowerment. You're really rooted. You have got a heritage which is more than slavery. Sure, there was slavery, but that's not all. That's all part of it. Long before that, there's a heritage of kings, seafarers, religious missionaries, and they were all here. But it happened so long ago, there's just so little of it left.
But some adults have difficulty handling that.
What connects it up is even the word Moor, because it's pronounced differently in different parts of Africa. And they call themselves Moor, Mu, Mur. There's all variations of that, so that even the name Mur.
And individuals are missing the point.
The conversation, stop it.
I'm a Moor, and got sense enough to know I'm a Moor, and ain't gonna never argue with you that I'm not a Moor, and wouldn't come in your house or come among you and say I'm a Moor if I didn't feel in my heart, in my mind, in my soul that I am.
If you don't understand that, get that together real quick.
And recognize how you've been miseducated, not just by Europeans, but by your own. These people know that you're not black. They don't doubt it. They know that you're not black. And they know that you're Moors.
All right, there you have it. Now let's go down here and get a little bit deeper now. Let's see what one of the presidents of the United States had to say about this in a meeting. And we have him speaking on this, because if you listen, there's a lot of things that are being said, but they won't just come out right and say, well, okay, the Moors this and the Moors that, but I want you to pay attention to what this man has to say.
Moorish Americans are indigenous to America.
Now we have the president, foreign diplomat, representing the United States Corporation Company. His name is Barack H. Obama.
I am proud to be the first American president to come to Kenya. And of course, I'm the first Kenyan American to be president of the United States. That goes without saying.
Barack H. Obama, knowing the problems that we have here at Morocco, and knowing that our people's heads are messed up, and also knowing that the world is turning around, and knowing that for these generations to come, that some truths have to come out.
The fez that the Shriners wear is the fez of the Moors. Is the fez of the Moors. is the fez of the Moors. And the tassel on its top is tied down. It was not allowed to swing a full 360 degrees because they only had 33.
So he went to Hikupta, which is the proper name of Egypt. All scholars know that. Right? Now,
Give me a reference.
Let me finish.
Give me a reference.
Let me finish. So he went to Hikupta and exposed that the American Constitution is derived from Muslim law, which all scholars always knew.
The first nation to recognize my country was Morocco. In signing the treaty,
Right? Now, Michelle triangulates go to the Alhambra, the last stronghold of the Moors. They have pictures taken of them by the international community coming through double doors dealing with the Kabbalistic principles, ancient African culture, higher self, lower self. Guard standing right next to him with the Moorish flag big as day. Then they come back here and sign the rights of indigenous people for these people to declare their nationality.
In April, we announced that we were reviewing our position on the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And today I can announce that the United States is lending its support to this declaration.
In 2010, President Obama signed on to the rights of indigenous people.
Because the international community has been addressing this since 1948.
Morocco was the first nation to recognize American independence.
There were many Moors in the Continental Congress working with the European Masons originally taught by the Moors to form Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new secular order of the ages, e pluribus unum, out of many peoples, nations, one.
E pluribus unum, out of many, one. That's why we're here. That's what we're called to do, and I'm confident that if we keep up our efforts, that if we continue to work together, that we will live up to this simple motto and we will achieve a brighter future for the first Americans and for all Americans. So thank you very much. God bless you. Thank you.
But the Moors know this. You know the Masons know this. You know the Jesuits know this. You know government officials know this. You know the industrialists know this. But everybody's silent. Why? It's not to their economic benefit for these troops to be out.
But some adults have difficulty handling that.
All right. Now, let's get down into the nitty-gritty and let's deal with America, the land of the Moors. We're going to deal with that. I'm going to take a little quick break, and I'm going to run a commercial. And when we get back, then we're going to go directly down in there. Hold on.
All right, everybody. Don't forget, the greatest focal point in your life is when preparedness and opportunity meet. Hello, I'm Tarhaka Amana El Bay. I want to give a shout out to all the brothers and sisters across the country that got our secure party and credit information, who's now officially operating in the private. Keep in mind, you can access the direct treasury account, private banking, knowing the difference between public and private and being able to function correctly. Do that OID. Learn about your 1099s. You can do a whole lot of stuff once you have the knowledge to do so. Go to TarhakaDebtElimination.com tarhaka.org. That's tarhaka.elimination.org. Fill out the contact us form.
Four of these major impacts that the black people have made to the Americas, not only before Columbus was born, but before even Spain or Italy existed. That's the kind of roots that are in this country. And by knowing that, and the more you know about it, it's an empowerment. You're really rooted. You have got a heritage which is more than slavery. Sure, there was slavery, but that's not all. That's all part of it. Long before that, there's a heritage of kings, seafarers, religious missionaries, and they were all here. But it happened so long ago, there's just so little of it left.
But some adults have difficulty handling that.
What connects it up is even the word Moor, because it's pronounced differently in different parts of even of Africa. And they call themselves Moor, Mu, Mur. There's all variations of that, so that even the name Mur.
Individuals are missing the point.
People will say, well, big deal, so what? Why is history important at all? History is extremely important. Imagine if I could take from each one of you as an individual everything you knew about life up to last week and just erase it. Where would you be? You'd be lost. You'd be incompetent. You wouldn't know how to plan for the future. And you do the same thing with a people. If you erase their history or you don't tell enough about their past, they also become incompetent and they can't fulfill the future. And that's why a lot of people in the black community have felt, well, how come all the dreams of the civil rights movement aren't yet fulfilled? And one reason is because this history is still suppressed. It still isn't taught. But there's been a recent discovery which is going to blow the lid off of all that. And that's what I'm going to talk about.
100 years later, the Negro is still languishing in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. Now, have you ever wondered what that passage meant from Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech? I did, and what I found was one of the biggest secrets that's not really a secret at all, except to many African Americans, is they are not descended from Africans.
Dr. King also stated in his I Have a Dream speech that we are held in exile in our own homeland.
100 years later, the Negro has still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land.
Now, we have a lot of scholars and etymologists out there, and individuals are missing the point. How can you be held in exile in your own homeland without it being your own home?
Moorish Americans are indigenous to America.
I know, I was shocked too, so much so that I asked Africans, and they agreed African Americans weren't Africans. If you don't believe me, Google Arnaldus Montanus America and see the people he saw in 1671. Read books like The Black American Handbook for Survival through the 21st Century by Radine Amin-Ra, What Every African American Should Know by Carrie Davis, and Africans and Native Americans by Jack Forbes. I just can't believe schools aren't teaching this stuff. What a travesty.
And individuals are missing the point.
This is a tremendous lesson for us because, you know, we're so proud of our American civilization. We think it'll go on forever. But when a civilization falls, history tells us it takes almost all memory of it with it. Civilization is really very fragile. And that's why these lessons from the past are very, very important. If we want to preserve our civilization, we have to learn what happened to these others that crashed.
But some adults have difficulty handling that.
We now know for a fact that long before Columbus, there were 4 major migrations of blacks to the Americas, different parts of the Americas, for totally different reasons, totally separated from each other by many centuries. But nonetheless, there were these black, you can call them migrations, but they were not in charge. I'll describe, and you can make up your own mind what they were. The most recent of these took place about 400 years before Columbus was even born, and it's all outlined in a marvelous book over there. It's called The Golden Trade of the Moors. And it is now known that the West African Kingdom of Mali had huge fleets of merchant vessels, and that these kings, these black kings of West Africa, began sailing across the Atlantic to Mexico as early as 900 A.D.
But some adults have difficulty handling that.
But these Mali kings, 900 A.D., they set out because they had a legend that there had been blacks going long before them. It was only a legend. It was only a myth. And it was on that myth that they chanced and they went across the sea and it worked out for them. But that myth traced all the way back to an even earlier black contact between Africa and America. And I'm talking about now not Mexico, but what we call now the United States.
The most important group of culture we have in Mexico, and individuals are missing the point. The most important group of culture we have in Mexico, well known as the Olmeca. Olmeca, 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 Olmeca. I guess everybody knows, it's not a subject, right? Yes. We have the Olmecs, but the Olmecs not from the Yucatan. The Olmecs from Veracruz, right? Veracruz. The Gulf of Mexico. Sí. This is where we have San Lorenzo, which is the most important site about the Olmecs. The Olmecs, one of the nicknames for the Olmecs in Mexico, it is Cultura Madre. Cultura Madre. Cultura Madre. Do you understand that? For what? Cultura Madre. Madre, the mother of... The mother of the cultures. Okay. Cultura Madre, the mother of the cultures, right? Because it is considered as the first, I mean, culture
on this continent that so much people nowadays like to consider like almost a little bit more than 3,000 years before Jesus Christ. Break it down! But I guess, well, I guess the most important thing to mention, right, it is that the Olmecs is still a mystery in Mexico. We say Olmecs, right? Yes. But some of the scholars nowadays like to consider that it is not relation in between that name with that people. Yeah, I mean, Olmec means rubber people, right?
The Olmecs were a tribe in Africa called Dogon in Mali. When the Dogons migrated to America, they also imported the rubber tree, which is only indigenous to Africa. The Dogons used the sap from the rubber tree to make shoes, coats, capes, and they were the first to introduce soles on shoes in the New World. The name Olmec means rubber people. The rubber was also used to make large balls for the Olmecan ball game ceremonies, which was played in large stone arenas. When Christopher Columbus arrived in the West, he states that he saw natives kicking around a large ball that was made of some type of acacia. Columbus took some of these trees and balls back to Spain with him, and today, soccer is the favorite national sport of Spain. These Olmecs set up empires and cities that predate even the Inca, the Aztecs, and the Mayans. The Olmecs were not Siberians. The Olmecs were dark-skinned, big-lipped, wide-nosed Africans, just as they are portrayed in the stone monoliths. The step pyramids of Egyptians closely resembles the step pyramids found in the Americas. The double crown of Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt with the bird and the serpent is also found in Olmecan culture, with Upper and Lower Egypt being Northern and Southern America. The Mexicans have 4 calendars. The 4th calendar is identical to the Egyptian calendar. In Mexico, there was found a type of paper made from a specific type of wood pulp that scientists say can only be found in Egypt. Even the ceremonial dance of the Hopi Indians is identical to the Dogon's Bado dance of Africa, using the same symbols and spirit names. Various tribes such as the Osage and the Apache use the crescent moon symbol, which is the national symbol of Angola, Mauritania, Tanzania, the Sahara, and Algeria, all found on the continent of Africa.
But some adults have difficulty handling that.
So we know for sure between 900 and 1600 AD, long before Columbus was even born, as I say, these blacks were trading, these black kingdoms were trading with Mexico.
And individuals are missing the point.
Those 2 black migrations to the Americas are not the only 2. There are 2 more, 2 earlier ones still. We go way back in history. Around 1,000 years before Christ, 3,000 years ago. It's such a long time ago, it's hard to even imagine. There were a people called the Phoenicians. These were Canaanite people that are mentioned in the Bible. They were half Semitic and half something else. Who knows what they were? They were very well traveled. They were very great seafarers. And they employed all kinds of races on their ships because they didn't really have any particular homeland. They were always traveling, went everywhere. They were the first to go around Africa, known to go around Africa, 900 BC. And it's known that they employed many blacks on their ships, not as slaves. They had no slaves on board their ships. But they did have sailors. They did have captains. These people definitely crossed the ocean also to Mexico. It made a very strong impact on a civilization called the Olmecs. The Olmecs, that's just as a name for this very, very early civilization, the earliest known civilization in Mexico. And everyone thought at one time, well, it's just an Indian civilization until 1861. 1861, a farmer plowing his field came across a very strange domed rock, a black rock. and he couldn't dig it out. The more he dug down, the bigger this rock got. Until he dug the entire thing away. It took him weeks to dig it away. And it turned out that he unearthed a 9-foot-high statue of a head, beautifully done, of an African, not an Indian at all the portrayed features of a West African man.
And individuals are missing the point.
Of an African, not an Indian at all the portrayed features of a West African man.
And individuals are missing the point.
From that time until recently now, there have been 11 of these giant stone heads. Let's see, I'll give you an idea how big they are. They're an average, well, there's 11 found now. They're between 6 and 9 feet high, and they weigh 40 tons apiece. They're magnificently carved.
In 1492, you came upon a shore, 700 years educated by the Moors. 17th century, genocide in the gun, narrow passage left to market the African in the so-called land of God. My kind were treated hard from back then until now, I see.
And individuals are missing the point.
While these were being found, more of the Olmec civilization was found, and a temple was discovered that had also the same type of people, these West African people portrayed as kings and warriors. So when the first archaeologists found these, they says, well, these are probably just blacks that got blown across the sea and were enslaved. But you don't make huge heads portrayed with crowns of your slaves. You know, these were obviously regents, powerful people.
But some adults have difficulty handling that.
The revelation of this hidden civilization reconstructed the indigenous history that has now been extended to reveal a hidden past. It is apparent that the Archaic period preceded even some of the great civilizations of the East, 900 to 400 BC. The people of this period were not primates. These archaic indigenous inhabitants belonged to a class of Homo sapiens, thus leading to the belief that the ancient America, despite the narrow-minded kaleidoscope view of cave dwellers and tree climbers, was a highly advanced civilization. We see this in the advanced artistry and sculpturing, which was quite different than the art and sculpturing of tribal cultures. Mesoamerica archaeology proves enough data to suggest that these inhabitants were a high-status group with the presence of elite leaders, a military force, a political hierarchy, and a quite obviously, or at least sensible, penal system, as opposed to a primitive tribal culture's vigilante methods of punishment.
How did they get there that long ago? Because those heads are dated to about 3,000 years ago. So far as is known, there was no black civilization then. That came later. It appears that these were sailors and captains working with the Phoenicians. Maybe they jumped ships, maybe they got shipwrecked, but somehow they got along fine with this Olmec community, so much so that they rose to become the leaders of that society.
The Dogons were already on American land because they simply sailed over by way of the worldwide wind and currents. The first Africans to set foot on American soil were in fact the Dogons of Mali, who used such currents as the Canary and the North Equilateral Current that recycles from West Africa to America and into the upper Atlantic Ocean. This was before the invention of sails. The Guinea Current flows eastward along the Guinea coast with frequent cycles out to the sea where it joins the South Equatorial.
Now, basically, what science has now found, although this is suppressed for the most part, there have been some great researchers. You have some wonderful books, like by Ivan van Sertima, who's talking about these things. This is not taught in your public schools, although it will be. The history that the children are learning today is not going to be history that's going to be taught in the next 25 years. It's going to be radically different.
If it escapes you, let me explain. The current American education states African Americans were brought to America as slaves from Africa, which is simply not true. They are American indigenous, not descendants of Africans. As they say, the truth is stranger than fiction. Although this fact isn't spoken of openly, it's not a secret. However, with programming such as Roots, 12 Years a Slave, The African American Story, and the Book of Negros, did any wonder why so many African Americans are confused? We won't address all the misleading DNA tests being provided to connect African Americans to Africa. So, the argument is, do they continue identifying as African Americans, which is a fake identity for them, or embrace being identified as indigenous Americans?
But some adults have difficulty handling that.
Are there any consequences of choosing one identity over the other?
William, that's a good question. According to African Americans Ain't Africans Facebook forum, identifying as African American is to quietly relinquish ancestral connections to America, connections that go back hundreds of thousands of years.
As an African American, we have no inalienable or indigenous rights under the Constitution. Even worse, as an African American Christian, we dig an even deeper hole for ourselves. As black Christians, we have to admit two things. We are former slaves by calling ourselves African, and we are former slaves who converted to the slave owner's religion. Thus, we sever any connection to sovereignty or self-identity.
I have no respect for Christianity to begin with. It's useless. It's a white man's religion. It was never meant for people of color and hue. I feel bad for black Christians because they're in for a sad awakening. All right? In fact, get the hell out now. Because because when I'm done decimating Christianity, you're going to be running back to Egypt and Islam for solace, okay?
As African American Christians, we literally become dependent on the government and relinquish all indigenous and self-governing classifications. Thus, we throw ourselves on the mercy of the U.S. judicial system. Native Americans have what is called autonomy or self-government, similar to diplomatic immunity. As indigenous people, we have the right to set up our own sovereign nation. We govern our own judicial, legislative, and penal system. As African Americans, we waive the right of self-governing and indigenous rights by admitting that we are immigrants who came over from somewhere else.
But I know my roots, and I ain't Kunta Kinte.
And individuals are missing the point.
Africa is not our home. Let me let that hang in the atmosphere for a while. I said at this gathering of the masters, Africa is not your home.
But some adults have difficulty handling that.
I'm a Moor, and got sense enough to know I'm a Moor. And ain't gonna never argue with you that I'm not a Moor. And wouldn't come in your house or come among you and say I'm a Moor if I didn't feel in my heart, in my mind, in my soul that I am.
If you don't understand that, get that together real quick. And recognize how you've been miseducated, not just by Europeans, but by your own. These people know that you're not black. They don't doubt it. They know that you're not black. And they know that you're Moors.
Now, it is a great Masonic secret that has long been revealed that it was George Washington who chopped down the cherry tree of the Moors, erasing them from the history books and removing their nationality, fez and turbans. It was even predicted that in a few hundred years many of them would not remember who they were or their connection to the land. It was Morocco who supported and gave rise to the independence of the United States of America as it has been recognized by President Obama.
The first nation to recognize my country was Morocco.
Bashar, and he also knows that North America is known as Al-Maghreb Al-Aqsa.
Of course, I know that. North America was known as Al-Maghreb Al-Aqsa, and it's reported to the Sultan of Morocco.
But some adults have difficulty handling that. But that's the truth.
And there was a relation, this is why I needed to ask you, what's the relation between the first, colonials and the governors of Morocco, because they communicated, because on paper it was part of Greater Morocco. That's known.
That's known.
It is often not talked about, but the Moors had enslaved the Europeans before they enslaved blacks. Their women were sold like commodities into the harems and as concubines of wealthy Moors. This is the reason why the Moorish noble were for the most part bleached out and became as tawny Moors, Turks and Arabs, which are no more than fixed mulatto races.
So it's very frustrating to try to prove that you're Native American. I found it frustrating for me because I was like, where is it? You know, I know that I'm Islamic, that I'm Islamic, that I'm Islamic. And I know, well, Islamic, if you want to call it that.
This is also the reason for the Moors in the coats of arms of the noble European families, the so-called black nobility of Europe. The European nations paid tribute to the Moors well into the 18th century. In the book, The United States and Rivalry Powers, the English, French, Dutch, Danes, and Swedes, and may I say all nations, are tributary to them. David McRitchie in the book Ancient and Modern Britons says the word blackmail is the result of this tribute paid to the black army or black oppressors as the English referred to them. The Moors had control of the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. This is why the Marines sing of defeating the Moors, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, confirming the extent of the Moorish Empire and dominions of Amexem, or Atlantis.
And everybody knows that, but that kind of spoils the game that they've been playing on our people. You see the point?
But even...
Okay, I think that's enough. What I want to do now is get down into the hidden history of the Moors. And I'm going to take another little quick break, and we'll get right on down in there. And keep in mind, the phone lines are open. The number to dial in, 563-999-3443. Press 1 on your phone if you got something to say. I'll open up the phone lines and you can ask whatever questions that you have. Okay? All right. Y'all hold on a minute.
All right, everybody. Don't forget, the greatest focal point in your life is when preparedness and opportunity meet. Hello, I'm Tarhaka Amana El Bay. I want to give a shout out to all the brothers and sisters across the country that got our secure party and credit information. It was now officially operating in the private. Keep in mind, you can access the direct treasury account, private banking, knowing the difference between public and private and being able to function correctly. Do that OID. Learn about your 1099s. You can do a whole lot of stuff once you have the knowledge to do so.
All right, y'all. So are Moors and American Indians the same people? Let's get into it. So today we're going to be reading from this book called We Are All Moors, Enduring Centuries of the Crusades Against the Muslims by Onur Majid. While blackness and Mohammedanism were stereotyped as evil, Renaissance representations of the Moor were vague, varied, inconsistent, and contradictory. As critics have established, the term Moor was used interchangeably with such similarly ambiguous terms as African, Ethiopian, Negro, and even Indian to designate a figure from different parts or the whole of Africa or beyond who was either black or Muslim. So it says the term Moor was applied to people who had dark skin, whether they was black or Muslim, and that's sometimes applied to Indians. Why? Because Indians were dark-skinned people. So they applied that term to them calling them Moors. Moor was a common term back then, especially in the 1600s. Moor was a common term, just like how your grandmothers or your grandparents would call themselves Cherokee if they were an Indian. Cherokee was a common term, so when you have ancestors that say, I'm a Cherokee, they may not necessarily be from the Cherokee tribe. They may just be saying, I'm an Indian, because it was a common term, just like how we use the term black today. It's the same thing. They were doing the same thing back then. So it says they used the term Moor for people who were either black or Muslim, neither or both. It says to complicate the vision further, the Moor was characterized alternately and sometimes simultaneously in contradictory extremes as noble or monstrous, civil or savage. Michael Neal, echoing Bartel's description, elaborates by saying that insofar as the term Moor was a term of racial description, it could refer quite specifically to the Berber Arab people of North Africa rather than vaguely dominated as Morocco, Mauritania, or Barbary. Or it could be used to embrace the inhabitants of the whole North African littoral, or it might be extended to refer to Africans generally, whether white, black, or tawny Moors. You see that? Or by an even more promiscuous extension, it might be applied like Indian to almost any darker skinned peoples, even on occasion those of the New World. It says like an Indian to almost any dark skinned person. You see that? So any dark skinned person, they was calling them Moors. So don't get caught up with, because I know a lot of people go back and forth with the Moors, and I know the reason why it's happening, because people feel as though the Moors helped conquer the American continent, which there were Moors who came to the Americas and helped enslave and dominate the lands. I understand that. But don't get caught up when the people who identify as Moor in the Americas today, those people are not saying that they are from North Africa. All right? Those people are using it as a term meaning skin color, because that's what it was applied to. That's why I'm bringing this out. All right? Now watch this. It says, consequently, when Marlos Valdez refers to the supine obedience of Indian Moors, their Spanish lords, it is usually assumed that the two terms are simply mutually intensifying synonyms, and that the magician means something like dusky New World natives. You see that? Dusky New World natives. It said, but Moor could often be deployed in a fashion perhaps inflected even for the English by memories of the Spanish Reconquista as a religious category. It says, thus Muslims on the Indian subcontinent were habitually called Moors, and the same term is used in East India Company literature to describe the Muslim inhabitants of Southeast Asia, whether they be Arab or Indian traders or indigenous Malays. You see that? So they was applying it to anybody that was dark-skinned. So when you see these people, Moors, saying they indigenous or they American Indian, just understand it's not meant in a term that we're from North Africa, or I'm saying that's not what they're saying it for. Okay, Moor was applied to anybody that was dark-skinned. And I have to continue to show you guys this so people don't get upset and offended and, you know, we going at each other for whatever reason. Just understand what they're saying. Okay, it's not meaning that the indigenous people of America are from North Africa. All right, Moor was just a term describing a skin color of people. It's not a race. As we know, Moor is just a title. American Indian is a title. Native American, indigenous, aboriginal. These are all titles. That's all they are. They are not nationalities. Now, legally, American Indian would be our race. Legally, if you are indigenous, okay? If you are indigenous, if you come from indigenous roots, your race would be American Indian. That is your race. Your nationality would be your nation that you're from. Choctaw, Cherokee, Mohawk, whatever nation you're from. All right, now this book is called Delaware, A Guide to the First State by the Federal Writers Project. And they're referring to the Nanticoke Indians and this Indian school. Watch this. It says, the social lines these people draw among themselves often baffle their white neighbors and the state authorities alike. Though the Delaware school system is officially divided into white and Negro schools, there are 4 separate kinds in this region. Within a few miles of one another, there are white schools, Negro schools, and a school listed as a Moor school and the Nanticoke Indian school. Children attending the latter are apparently no different in color or otherwise from their cousins outside the Nanticoke Indian Association. You see that? They was calling the Moors cousins to the Nanticoke Indians, and they said they are the same color. That's why they had that term applied to them, as we just read in the first book. That's why I want y'all to keep in mind, always understand, Moor is not a race. It is not a race. It is not a race. It's none of that. Moor is just a title. That's all it is, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, now this book is called The Image of the Black in Western Art by David Beinman. It says the Matrix is both the rising D-tree and the explanation of the Moorish chieftain, for it had been presented to the ancestor of Augustus II by Emperor Rudolph II in 1581, and it was described in early inventory as Os Dem Occidentalisticum Indian, from the Western Indies. Having been sent to Emperor Charles V from Colombia, the matrix embodied the riches of the New World, so its princely bearer is meant to represent a Native American. You see that? And what they're referring to is this Moorish Indian. It's holding this thing they called a matrix. And that's what they're referring to. They said this is meant to represent a Native American. And it's a picture that's been famously posted around everywhere. It says, moreover, many of the details, the tattooing of the body, the crown, and the medallions were copied from the illustrations to an account of the Indian tribes in Florida published by Theodore de Bry in his Historia Americae 1590 to 1596. De Bry's volumes on American Indians were an influential source for images of the inhabitants of the New World, but the point of departure for Permoser's construction of the figure remained the standard type of a Moor found in the contemporary European art, with the localization details added. It says the American Moor represents a form of noble savage offering up riches in a prelapsarian world, and there is a possible attempt at humor in the figure's utter lack of any sense of the preciousness of what he wears or carries. It says, rather than adornment to clothing, the gold and jewels are clothing. He is not a tame court savage like the turbaned figure at the great mogul's court, but like the matrix itself, unredeemed from a primordial state. Permoser's American Indian may be compared with a pair of small-scale ebony Moors with similar gold and silver body ornaments, carrying platters of seed pearls. You see that? And those seed pearls they're talking about is they call it a matrix. So that's what it's talking about. It's the same thing. So Moors and Indians were used interchangeably based on skin color. All right? And I doubt that they called any lighter skinned indigenous people Moors. I doubt that. It was only based off skin color. Now this book is called The Tragedy of Othello, the Moor of Venice by William Shakespeare. It says the Elizabethans were not precise in their use of the term Moor. You see that? And these Elizabethans is referring to Queen Elizabeth I when she was ruling England. That's what they're talking about, all right? So it says the Elizabethans were not precise in their use of the term Moor. It could refer to the tawny Moors or to black Moors, and not only to men from North Africa, but to dark-skinned men from such places as Malacca, Ethiopia, and America. You see that? So they was calling the Indians Moors, dark-skinned people in America Moors, and that was referring to the American Indian. All right? It says the play Lust Dominion 1599 shows the confusion. Eleazar, a black Moor born in Barbary, is called an Indian and described as tawny. You see that? He was called an Indian and described as tawny. So all of this information regarding Indians was only referring to color, ladies and gentlemen. So we can stop going back and forth with each other about Moors and indigenous people. You guys see plain and clear that they were only using that term described for dark-skinned people. So I don't want to see people bringing books out and all of this other stuff talking about Moors or the real indigenous people and all this. Moor is only talking about a skin color. It's no different from calling somebody black or colored or Negro. It all means the same thing. Moor just means a dark-skinned individual. That's all it's referring to. Quit trying to act like Moor is talking about being descent from North Africa or a Berber or from Mauritania or something like that, because the people who call themselves Moors in America, those people do not come from there. And if they do come from there, if they originally come from North Africa, then those people are not indigenous. And if that's what you're saying, if you're saying that you originally come from North Africa, if that is what you're saying, and you're trying to claim America as Morocco and all this other stuff, like, bro, listen, no, that's not the same thing of what they're talking about and how they're using it in these historical books. They're not using it in that sense. They're using it in a sense of skin color only. They're not talking about the people from North Africa. So if that's what you're claiming you're from, if that's what you're saying, you need to go back to North Africa and back to Morocco, because this is America. This is Turtle Island, and we are the indigenous people.
Oh, boy. Okay. Well, I think a lot of people probably understand me now. But nevertheless, I got another plug on the Moors that I want to do. And I'm going to see if I boy, I don't think I'm going to make it. I probably had to do part 3 to cram these Egyptians in here, in America. But I don't know who, they had a roundtable discussion, and I know this stuff was televised, but I'm just going to run it anyway. And you all know who Mr. Isaiah Thomas is. He played basketball. I don't know, did he play for the Lakers or the Celtics? It's been so long ago. But nevertheless, let's run this thing.
The criminalization of, minorities in this country, the enslavement of minorities in this country. So the first thing that I would do is what the Constitution was written for in the first place, was to eliminate the race box.
The citizens of all free national governments, according to their national constitution, are all of one family, bearing one free national name. Those who fail to recognize the free national name of their constitutional government are classed as undesirables and are subject to all inferior names and abuses and mistreatments that the citizens care to bestow upon them. And it is a sin for any group of people to violate the national constitutional laws of a free national government and cling to the names and principles that delude to slavery.
Well, I think you have to go back to Lincoln in the 13th Amendment with 20 articles, not 3.
Here is Section 12 of the original 13th Amendment with its 20 sections, which would have saved our people a lot of trouble with reverting back to our nationality. The traffic in slaves with Africa is hereby forever prohibited on pain of death and the forfeiture of all the rights and property of persons engaged therein, and the descendants of Africans shall not be citizens. And I repeat that. And the descendants of Africans shall not be citizens. Logically, it makes sense because we would be proclaiming our nationality at that time, which is our birthright and everyone's right. Everyone has the right to a nationality. Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948, Article 15, Section 1, everyone has the right to a nationality. Section 2, no one should be arbitrarily deprived of their nationality nor denied their right to change their nationality. Here's Amendment 13, Section 17, Clause 2 or 3. Congress may assist free persons of African descent to immigrate and colonize Africa. It is important to comprehend the terminology that is being used, such as the words immigrate and colonize. Here's the definition of the word immigrate. Leave one's own country in order to settle permanently in another. Here's the definition of the word colonize. of a country or its citizens send a group of settlers to a place and establish political control over it. Come to settle among and establish political control over the indigenous people of an area. Appropriate a place or domain for one's own use. Here's the definition of the word settler. A person who moves with a group of others to live in a new country or area.
These four brothers sitting here, we didn't all come from Africa. And there was a country before 1492, and our history goes way beyond 1492. So you can't start us at 1492. We were always here. We were always here. The elimination, you won't need the 14th and the 15th Amendment?
The 14th and 15th Amendments brought the North and South in unit, placing the Southerners who were at that time without power with the constitutional body of power. And at that time, 1865, the free national constitutional law that was in force since 1774 declared all men equal and free. And if all men are declared by the free national constitution to be free and equal, since that constitution has never been changed, there is no need for the application of the 14th and 15th Amendments for the salvation of our people and citizens.
It was more than about having a dream. It was about, the continuance of a dream and the continuance of us as a fallen people in this country to uplift ourselves into humanity and be a part of the Constitution and be a part of law and be a part of this society.
There is but one issue for them to be recognized by this government and of the earth, and it comes only through the connection of the Moorish Divine National Movement, which is incorporated in this government and recognized by all other nations of the world. And through it, they and their children can receive their divine rights unmolested by the other citizens, that they can cast a free national ballot at the polls under the free national constitution of the state's government and not under a granted privilege as has been the existing condition for many generations.
On our people, you see the point? When they turned the republic into a corporation.
The idea that the United States is a corporation, right?
Yeah. Well, it is. That's true. The United States is a corporation.
In order to put the Moors later, as they did earlier, solidify the 14th Amendment artificial person in the state of Delaware as Christian property. This is why such persons is called Negroes, Black, and Coloreds, and what do they call themselves this week, can't vote with them names that don't belong to them, except that the overseer, or what you call the CEO, through the Senate, agrees that their cattle can vote as 3/5 persons because they have no name and nationality. When you understand the history from a law perspective, your view will change from it just being some historical flaw or some little dirty trick that the Europeans do. You would need to understand its political ramifications. If you transact business in another man's name, don't talk about estates and don't talk about property because you don't even own your own body.
Race is a social construct, and it was invented. And it was invented in this country, right, to talk and to call each other black, white, colored, Negro, African American, whichever label you choose.
The word Negro alludes in the Latin language to the word nigger, the same as the word colored alludes to anything that is painted, varnished, and dyed. And every nation must bear a national descent name of their forefathers, because honoring thy fathers and thy mothers, your days will be lengthened upon this earth. These names have never been recognized by any true American citizens of this day. Through
your free national name, you are known and recognized by all nations of the earth that are recognized by said national government in which they live.
And I would say this to all of you, all of us who have traveled outside of the United States. When you travel outside of the United States, whatever country you enter into, you never, ever say you're black, and you never signify as white. You never, ever say you're black, and you never signify as white.
If Italians, Greeks, English, Chinese, Japanese, Turks, and Arabians are forced to proclaim their free national name and religion before the constitutional government of the United States of America, it is no more than right that the law should be enforced upon all other American citizens alike. In all other governments, when a man is born and raised there and asks for his national descent name, and if he fails to give it, he is misused, imprisoned, or exiled. And any group of people that fail to answer up to the constitutional standards of law by name and principles, because to be a citizen of any government, you must claim your national descent name, because they place their trust upon issue and names formed by their forefathers.
Here we go. Chinese, Russian, Italian, German, Swedish, Korean, Egyptian, Nigerian, black.
I would eliminate the race box.
I love my people, and I desire their unity and mine back to their own national and divine standard, because day by day they have been violating the national and constitutional laws of their government by claiming names and principles that are unconstitutional.
When you talk about the greatest leaders of all time, they were all servants. Jesus Christ, Buddha, Mohammed, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King. When you talk about leaders of men and leaders of a society and people who inspired, they were all servants to mankind in trying to uplift humanity.
So I, the prophet, am hereby calling aloud with a divine plea to all true American citizens to help me to remove this great sin which has been committed and is being practiced by my people in the United States of America, because they know it is not the true and divine way, and without understanding they have fallen from the true light into utter darkness of sin. And there is not a nation on earth today that will recognize them socially, religiously, politically, or economically, etc. In their present condition of their endeavorment, in which they themselves try to force upon a civilized world, they will not refrain from their sinful ways of action, and their deeds have brought them Jim Crowism, segregation, and everything that brings harm to human beings on earth. And they fought the Southerner for all these great misuses, but I have traveled in the South and have examined conditions there, and it is the works of my people continuously practicing the things which bring dishonor, disgrace, and disrespect to any nation that lives alive. And I am hereby calling on all true American citizens for moral support and finance to help me in my great missionary work to bring my people out of darkness into marvelous light.
Okay, we're back. Now, let's get down into the meat and potatoes of this thing. And let's see what the archaeologists got to say about some of this right here. Because based on what I'm looking at right here, they said it was in a state of shock about what they found over here in America. Archaeologists are in a disbelief.
Since its discovery some 500 years ago, the Grand Canyon in Arizona has been a site that has stunned humanity with its majesty. Now, the major tourist destination is also an important site for archaeological research for what is assumed ancient American history. But what many people don't know is that hidden within the caves of this incredible landmark lies evidence of none other than the ancient Egyptians, who existed some 12,000 kilometers away. What makes this groundbreaking discovery even more important was that it was discovered over a century ago and hidden by the authorities. In today's Crunch, we're going to explore this profound discovery and why the government still keeps this secret under tight security. Evidence of an ancient Egyptian presence in the Grand Canyon was first brought to public attention in 1909 by explorer G.E. Kincaid and his archaeological expedition down the Colorado River. Now, his findings were reported on by local newspapers at the time, citing that he'd found a great underground citadel deep in a cave located in the canyon. The evidence of an ancient Egyptian civilization found within this hand-carved cave is seriously compelling and far-reaching. The most important find was that of a shrine with a figure sitting cross-legged holding a lotus flower or lily in each hand. Now, some consider this to be indisputable evidence of Egyptian presence, as the lotus flower is native to Egypt and is a highly important symbol of their culture. This shrine was not the only ancient artifact found that's believed to belong to ancient Egypt. Hieroglyphics have been discovered in several different cave systems throughout the area, in addition to mummies and distinctly Egyptian weapons and tools. Now, these findings are believed to prove Kincaid's theory as true, but some argue that it lacked empirical evidence. However, the mystery only seems to grow deeper as a report published by the Smithsonian details an expedition that traversed through the canyon in 1869 and discovered none other than a mighty pyramid. John Powell's 1869 expedition into the Grand Canyon was intended to find archaeological findings relating to the Native Americans of the region. As the director of the Department of Ethnology at the Smithsonian, Powell was a respected member of the scientific community. Powell also worked for the Department of the Interior, which funded the expedition. He was to report all findings to the government first and foremost. This explains why what he found was covered up for over 100 years. Powell's believed to have found an ancient Egyptian pyramid similar to that found in the Valley of the Kings 12,000 kilometers away. The location of this pyramid has been under incredibly tight security ever since, leading many to speculate that what he found would truly break our understanding of the ancient world. The exact location of this supposed pyramid remains uncertain, as much of the area is heavily guarded by the US government. Many people have compared the security to that of Area 51, as anyone attempting to enter without permission is quickly arrested and then hurried away. This is in addition to a heavily monitored no-fly zone imposed above the entire area, keeping the exact findings of Powell's 1869 expedition hidden from the public. Powell's cave, named after himself, is in this restricted area. Quoted from his book, Powell found many man-made caves, strikingly similar to those reported by Kincaid some 40 years later. He writes about finding intricately designed cave systems with walkways, benches, and other great rooms. Importantly, he also reports finding ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. Powell estimated that the number of caves and their complexity could have housed up to 50,000 ancient Egyptians. Upon his findings, he quickly sent word to the Smithsonian before informing the government of his findings. Believed to be another interesting clue in the mystery of the canyon's history, as many speculate his reasoning for breaking his instructed protocol.
Powell also discovered the same shrine reported by Kincaid, stating the same characteristics of a golden statue holding lotus flowers. This shrine is believed to be for the pharaoh Smenkhare, who was crowned in the year 1337 BC. Now, alongside the shrine, Powell also found a tablet with hieroglyphics believed to be for teaching young Egyptians the complex writing system. They also located sarcophagi containing the mummified remains of the very people who transported this culture so far from home.
Powell's findings were all hastily taken to a Smithsonian storage building nearby, leading many people understandably to wonder why on earth the US government is taking the secrecy of this area so seriously. Could there possibly be more to this theory than we know? The secrecy of these findings and the area they're located in ensure the burning question remains: who built these elaborate tunnels and the artifacts, and where did they go?
From both Powell's and Kincaid's reports, we can identify these hand-carved cave systems to be approximately 3,000 years old. This is based on the tools used to carve out the ruins and the dating of the shrine found within them. Upon this evidence, we can conclude that this is not the work of Native Americans, and that it's more than likely to prove that the ancient world was much more advanced than we think. Unfortunately, the true details of this remarkable discovery remain largely undisclosed by government officials, leaving many questions unanswered, as we can only speculate on why the people who lived in these expansive tunnel networks left.
Now, it is known that the Smithsonian Institute has acquired these findings. However, they absolutely refuse to release any information on them. In tandem with the US government's heavy security on the topic and the area, well, we can only deduce that whatever the true findings of the area are, they would change everything.
Theories of the area remain. However, due to the secrecy and the security surrounding it, we may never know what lies beneath these cave systems in the national park. We can only imagine that one day we'll unlock the true mystery as to why so much secrecy is needed for this remarkable archaeological site. Until then, all we have are theories and speculation. Many argue against the existence of the Egyptian ruins, but can't supply evidence as to why the area of the hidden city is off limits, as if the rumours were in fact false. What is the need to hide the truth? Whatever lies beneath the grounds of this restricted area, it is obvious that the government is not willing to share. We can only hope that one day we'll unlock the truth as to why so much secrecy surrounds this remarkable archaeological site.
Many secrets are kept that could profoundly change the way we view our world. The involvement of a prestigious scientific community only really ensures that the findings of the restricted area truly are of significance.
Areas like Area 51 and other military installations have plausible deniability as to the necessity for the security, whereas the Grand Canyon, well, it doesn't offer this, as there have been no believable reasons for the amount of secrecy and security at the site of the lost city. The discovery of Egyptian artifacts within the depths of the Grand Canyon could potentially be the find of the century, if proven, as this discovery would change our understanding of the known world entirely. The reports made by the two respected explorers demand questions that have never been fully answered. But one thing is for certain: there are still wonders hidden beneath the canyon walls waiting to be uncovered, and only time will tell what other mysteries lie within this mysterious ancient world.
So that's all we have time for today on Crunch. The question is, did you enjoy the video? If you did, and I hope you did, make sure you hit the like button and
Hello my viewers and welcome back to my channel. I will come into a groundbreaking video where we will uncover the hidden secrets of America's ancient past. For centuries, we've been told that ancient Egypt was a far-off civilization separated from by time and space. But what if I told you that the truth is much closer to home? Join me on a journey as we explore the fascinating connections between ancient Egypt and America. From the Mississippi River being the true Nile to the pyramids of the Americas and the mysterious underground city in the Grand Canyon, we'll take a look into the astonishing evidence that's been hidden in plain sight. Now, in these videos, different people share their remarkable findings and insights, challenging everything we thought we knew about history. So get ready to have your mind blown as we venture into the unknown and uncover the secrets of ancient America. Take a look at these videos. I will be right back.
Common sense is at an all-time low and denial is a low. That's why I'm going to present you with the facts and expect you to do the heavy lifting with your critical thinking. First and foremost, the Mississippi River is the true Nile. In Isaiah 11:15 it says, "And the Lord shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea, and with his mighty wind shall he shake his hand over the river, and shall smite it in the 7 streams, and make men go over dry shod." That's what it says. The Nile does not do this. But you know what does? The Mississippi. Second point. The Mississippi still runs through the ancient cities that it ran through in the beginning of time. Thebes, Cairo, and Memphis. You have been made to believe that we named our cities after modern-day Egypt, when in fact that is not true. Modern-day Egypt named its cities after our cities in ancient America, which is also ancient Egypt. And before this video gets too long, I'm just going to add in a final point. Did you know that the Americas have more pyramids than the entire planet combined? Yeah. We'll get into the Grand Canyon on the next video. 90% of the Grand Canyon is off limits to the general public, which is backed by military services. But why? In 1908, President Teddy Roosevelt decided that he wanted to protect the canyon from timber and mining operations. With this knowledge, a gentleman by the name of G.E. Kincaid, along with the Smithsonian professor by the name of S.A. Johnson, decided that they were going to get a group together to do one final mineral expedition before it closed. What they discovered, however, was completely unexpected. About 40 miles upriver from El Tivar Crystal Canyon, they discovered sediment stains that didn't make sense for Arizona, USA. In addition to that, they also noticed a cavern entrance with steps leading up to it that was clearly a man-made structure. Once inside, they found an intricate underground city that could fit up to 50,000 people. There were ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs on the wall, granaries, tools made of copper. It did make sense. What all of this pointed to was an ancient civilization with advanced technology. In America, in Arizona, with connections to ancient Egypt. After finishing his exploration, G.E. Kincaid, recognizing the massiveness of this discovery, decided that he needed to go back and take an even larger group and bring the Smithsonian along. But they weren't going to allow him to do that. In fact, they offed him. And now, in 2024, the Smithsonian completely denies all accounts of this and calls it a hoax. But
Alright, so you're married. Have y'all ever wondered why America is ancient Egypt? A lot of people call America Turtle Island because it's the home of the reptiles. This is the land of Kemet, but the original name is Taught Marie. So along the Nile River in Africa, you have cities like Cairo, Karnak, Memphis, Egypt. Now in America, you have Karnak, Egypt, Cairo, Memphis, the same cities in Africa. This is what you call a mirror tribe, people who share the same cultures. A lot of people going to the Middle East looking for the Holy Land. The whole time, it's right here in America. The proof is right in front of our face. It's pyramids everywhere on our land. Even in Las Vegas, they have the hotel paying homage to the Egyptians. It's even carvings on the walls in America of us playing with the snakes. They replicated this same stuff and brought it to the New Egypt. We are the original snake clan from Turtle Island. We are the parents to the Egyptians in Africa. It's even on the money. We had our own kingdom set up over here. The females sat on the throne and they was the rulers. Egypt, Illinois was the capital of the world. Even your god Horus, he was a falcon, and a falcon is only native to America. And then one day, Alexander would come along and conquer the people of America. He would kill the men and take the females and children in as slaves. He would then keep all these people gold and silver for himself. He would then build his own library,
hiding all the stolen treasures and merchandise in there. So I told y'all the females ruled ancient America. Alexander the Great made his library a female library, calling it the Great Library of Alexandria instead of Alexander. He would be responsible for the fall of ancient America. But one day, his library would mysteriously burn down. But what really happened, they moved all the stolen treasure to the Vatican. It's a lot of hidden treasures beneath this city. This stuff go back centuries, y'all. Y'all don't even know. But this is how all our history was lost. They stole all of our history and hid it from us, literally, beneath castles. These invaders conquered the people and sat in the queen's seat. But she is back on the rise now. And those that suppressed her are crumbling now at her feet.
Now, these videos present a fascinating perspective on the connections between ancient Egypt and America, and the evidence is intriguing. The sisters' first point about the Mississippi River being the true Nile is supported by the fact that the Mississippi River is indeed one of the longest rivers in the world, stretching over 2,300 miles from Minnesota to the Gulf of Mexico. Now, her second point about the Mississippi River running through ancient cities is also backed by history. The cities of Cairo and Memphis, for example, have been continuously inhabited for thousands of years with evidence of ancient civilizations dating back to the Hopewell and Mississippian cultures. The fact that the Americas have more pyramids than the entire planet combined is a staggering statistic. While many people associate pyramids with ancient Egypt, there are indeed numerous pyramids scattered throughout the Americas, including the famous Cahokia Mounds in Illinois and the Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico. Regarding the Grand Canyon, it is true that 90% of it is off limits to the general public, and the reason for this is indeed shrouded in mystery. While the official explanation is that it's for environmental protection, many theorize that there may be more to it. The story of G.E. Kincaid and the Smithsonian professor's expedition to the Grand Canyon is also a real event. In 1909, Kincaid and his team did indeed discover an intricate underground city in the Grand Canyon, complete with ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs and advanced technology. While the mainstream narrative has dismissed this founding as a hoax, many believe that there may be truth to it. Now, according to research, 150 years ago, Americans could not match the scholars of France, Germany, and Great Britain in the study of ancient Egypt. Americans were concerned with their own future in their own land, were engrossed in the struggle between the North and the South, and had only a slight curiosity about Egypt as a land which figured rather unpleasantly in the Bible. In the years between 1894 and 1914, the pursuit of Egyptology shifted from the pleasant and leisurely avocation of the wealthy amateur to the serious and dedicated vocation of the professional. Two Americans, James Henry Breasted and George A. Resner, won international recognition and occupied the first two chairs of Egyptology established in this country. A similar change was taking place in parallel archaeological fields, but the concern of this book is limited to the study of ancient Egypt. Now, according to this article, Comparing Ancient Egypt or America, it says in comparing ancient Egypt and modern-day Americas, I found a few similarities and differences in their everyday lifestyles. Things like religion, government, social class, writing, and their job specializations. It was surprising to me to find out that the ancient Egyptians' way of living was somewhat like ours. Of course, there are heavier differences, but still, they were very modern for their times. Also, I'm in strong belief that we learned many things that are in our culture today from ancient Egypt. In the category of job specialization, the Egyptians had no real big corporations like we do today, but much simpler jobs. Some examples of their jobs are artisans who were skilled craft workers, bricklayers who built monuments, and many other things. The Egyptians also worried very much about the afterlife and made many preparations before the afterlife. Their graves were very important to them, and they also did much to keep them from decaying after they passed. That is why they had the idea of mummification to allow them to not decay long after they passed. We also pay a lot of money to allow us to keep from decaying on our burials and the coffins. The ancient Egyptians' government would be compared to us as a kind of monarchy. Their king was called the pharaoh, and everyone in the civilization listened to everything that he said. Every law and business transaction went through this man. In our day, we have only one leader, but thousands of others that decide the laws of our country. Now, in the last decade or so, controversies and wild speculations have swelled online around Grand Canyon National Park and a newspaper article published by the Arizona Gazette on April 5, 1909. The headlines read, "Explorations in the Grand Canyon, mysteries of immense ridge cavern being brought to light, or Jordan is infused. Remarkable finds indicate Asian people migrated from Orient." The Grand Canyon controversy is revealing in many ways and also disturbing in other ways. Now, the Grand Canyon article explains that an explorer named G.E. Kincaid had made the initial discovery and was joined by the Smithsonian scientist S.A. Jordan to study what was described as a wondrous labyrinthian honeycomb of man-made tunnels filled with seemingly Eastern treasures of golden urns, sophisticated copper tools, ancient artifacts, hieroglyphs, mummified remains, and statues whose iconography resembled those common to Hindu and or Egyptian cultures. If their theories are borne out by the tablets engraved with hieroglyphics, the mystery of the prehistoric peoples of North America, their ancient arts, who they were, whence they came, will be solved. Egypt and the Nile and Arizona and Colorado will be linked by a historical chain running back to ages, which will stagger the widest fancy of the fictionists. Now, modern-day skeptical writers, academics, and Smithsonian claim that this story is simply a piece of sensational yellow journalism. They insist it is a pure fabrication from top to bottom that preys on the spiritual yearnings of the gullible and superstitious public. On its surface, the article does appear improbable, at best, and at worst, a dishonest printing of fanciful tales to conjure up profits. The original author of the piece is anonymous, which does a disservice to either the believer and the skeptic camps, and there never was a follow-up article. The Smithsonian has publicly denied the story outright over 100 years later and denied any records verifying the existence of Kincaid or Professor Jordan. The story also asserts that a Smithsonian archaeologist named S.A. Jordan returned with Kincaid to investigate the site. However, the Arizona Gazette appears to have been the only newspaper ever to have published the story. No records can confirm the existence of either Kincaid or Jordan. Naturally, the academic community toes the party line without question. Now, alternative researchers clamor online insisting this is an elaborate cover-up. They claim that there does exist a forbidden zone within Grand Canyon National Park, which completely forbids anyone to hike, camp, or explore there. They also point to the curious names of the landmarks in this allegedly off-limits area, and they even go as far as to suggest that shadow branches of the federal government secretly monitor the entire area. In the more extremist alternative factions, this is only the tip of the proverbial iceberg as they expand the scope into a complex conspiracy of subterranean reptilian overlords that manipulate the ruling elite class. The objective researcher is justified in questioning the credibility of a newspaper and an anonymous author, but on the reverse side of that same token, this same researcher would be naive to blindly accept the mainstream narrative presented by a government institution that absolutely does have a conflict of interest regarding the manipulation of the human history narrative. Now, this is especially true when it comes to the U.S. government and the elevation of indigenous cultures in the early 20th century. So what is the reality? Whose word is to believe? We have finally come to the end of the video, but I want you, my viewers, to share your thoughts, your knowledge, your contributions in the comment section, and let's have a conversation there. Thank you for watching, and see you in my next video.
All right, everybody, there you have it. But I want to go a little bit further. I told you I was going to, I have Brother Horace Butler's book, When Rocks Cry Out, and right here in the 3rd chapter, 2nd paragraph, he states the following: I have seen ancient records that unveil the world's most explosive secret. Egypt had crossed the Atlantic Sea in ships more than 10,000 years before the time of Jesus Christ. They had built the world's largest cities in South and Central America and in Mexico. They had united those city-states into a nation that stretched from Brazil in the South America to Mexico and into Africa. I had broken the seal of the forbidden histories. I had found the writings that told how Egypt had built its most powerful empire, and it had happened in the Americas. Three of the world's most powerful religions had come out of Egypt, and now their most fearful secret was uncovered. More disturbing to some, I had gotten the old maps that showed where the ancient Egyptian cities had stood in the Americas. Ancient writings, including an autobiography left by Moses, explained that a civil war in Central and South America had forced the Egyptians to flee from the Americas. They escaped to the east side of Africa, where they built a second Egypt. That was not, however, the discovery the preacher was thinking of when he called the findings World War III. He had seen the city that ancient Egypt had built in the mountains of South America. It was the city that had stirred his fears and his reluctance. Ancient Egyptians had named that capital city Heru to keep alive the name of one of Egypt's founding kings. The city Heru was eventually called Heru Selim, then changed to Jerusalem, and it had stood in the Americas. It was the presence of ancient Egypt's Jerusalem in the Americas that kept scholars quiet and preachers fearful. When I showed them the old maps and the ancient writings and the forbidden histories, there were others who knew the forbidden histories. Even Christopher Columbus knew of these secrets. He wrote that South America's Orinoco River flowed out of paradise, where Adam and Eve had lived. I was stunned to see that Columbus had promised he would recapture Jerusalem when he reached the Americas. The Illuminati knew the secrets. They quietly discussed the 10 million Wall-Simula map that was made in 1507. They whispered that the map maker, Martin Wall-Simula, had revealed things on the map that were not supposed to be revealed. Okay? All right, now I'm going to go into the second part before we go. But let's go down in here and let's get to the next point that I want to make right here. And y'all hold on a minute. Let me get down in here. And let's see. Here we go right here.
Hello my viewers and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, then don't forget to subscribe because you will find my videos interesting and intriguing. Give this video a thumbs up by tapping on the like button and share your thoughts on what you think about today's video. Now in this video, I will come you to a journey that will challenge everything you thought you knew about history and geography. For centuries, we've been told that ancient Egypt was located in modern day Africa. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the biblical Egypt was actually located in the Americas? In today's video, join me as we explore a fascinating theory that suggests the heart of ancient Egypt was not in Africa, but in the Americas. From the mysterious descriptions of the Nile River in the Bible to the shocking similarities between Chicago and Cairo, we'll take a look into the evidence that's been hidden in plain sight. So get ready to question everything you thought you knew about the ancient world and the true location of one of history's most fascinating civilizations. Let's check out these videos. I will be right back.
The hidden Egypt. Is it possible that the heart of the biblical Egypt was in the Americas? Let's talk about it. Now, when it comes to looking for the geographic locations of certain civilizations, using the description from the books that talk about these civilizations, such as the Bible talking about Egypt, one of the best clues of finding a geographic location of a civilization is to look at the description of the big famous body of water that is next to these civilizations. For example, the most famous body of water next to Egypt, according to the Bible, happens to be the Nile. Now let's take a look at one of the descriptions of what the Bible says about the Nile River. This is Isaiah chapter 11 verse 15. And the Lord shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea, and with his mighty wind shall he shake his hand over the river, and shall smite it in the 7 streams, and make men go over dry shod. So in the book of Isaiah it says that the Nile has 7 major streams. However, when you look up the modern African Nile, it only has 3 main tributaries, 3 main streams. But the Bible states that the Nile has 7 streams. So when discussing ancient Egypt, the focus has to be on the Nile River system of the White Nile and the Blue Nile, which is allegedly the longest river in the world at 4,132 miles long. However, when you combine the Mississippi River system of the Missouri River, 2,540 miles, and the Mississippi, 2,340 miles, you have a total length in miles of 4,890, which is 758 miles longer than the Nile River system that is in Africa. So yes, the Mississippi River system is the longest, which is a strong indication that it was your first Nile River system. So the Mississippi River has 7 major streams, and it flows into the Gulf of Mexico, which possibly could indicate that the Gulf of Mexico was once known as the Egyptian Sea in the book of Isaiah, chapter 11, verse 15. Additional clues can be found with a quick study of the etymology of the name Missouri. You will learn that it's just a corruption of the word Mitzrayim. Who was Mitzrayim? Mitzrayim, according to the Bible, was the son of Ham. He was the younger brother of Cush and the elder brother of Phut and Canaan, the Phoenicians. Those families together made up the Hamite branch of Noah's descendants. So Mitzrayim is the Hebrew word for Egypt. So yeah, as I've stated, the modern African Nile only has 3 main tributaries, 3 main streams coming from the Nile, but the Bible states that there are 7. The Mississippi has 7 major streams. It is one of the longest rivers in the world, and it flows into the Mexican Gulf, or what is possibly the tongue of the Egyptian Sea. Mitzrayim is the Hebrew and Aramaic name for the land of Egypt. Mitzrayim is the dual form of Matzor, meaning a mound or fortress, the name of a people descended from Ham. It was the name generally given by the Hebrews to the land of Egypt and its people. You have mounds found all over the Americas, but especially all up and down the Mississippi River. In fact, you have so many mounds built along the Mississippi River, the academics have named the people that built them the Mississippi Mound Builders. This is a significant fact because mounds are associated with Mitzrayim, which is Egypt. You have virtually no mounds in Africa. Therefore, the sheer number of mounds in the Americas and pyramids in the Americas is a strong indication that America is Mitzrayim. So yes, it's a fact that the Americas have more mounds and pyramids than all of Africa combined. Now there are more clues to suggest that the heart of ancient Egypt was in the Americas, such as the biblical reference to ancient Egyptian corn, which could possibly be referring to corn mostly from Egypt, Texas. Since corn is only indigenous to the Americas, and since Texas is still a large producer of corn, for example, in Genesis chapter 42 verses 1 through 3 it says this, "Now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, Why do you look one upon another? And he said, Behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither, and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt." I'll show you some other references to corn in Matthew 12 verse 1. There's so many questions.
Questions or doubts?
The government, why haven't I seen proof?
If you did find proof, what would that change?
Everything. The truth is everything to me.
Truth. It can also bring pain.
Man, get in here, get in here, get in here. You know I don't take threats too lightly, right? So I have been challenged to show that Chicago is actually Cairo, Egypt. I have been challenged, and my last page, they got rid of it. You don't challenge Getty, but I will take your challenge. I will take it. I will take it. Yes, I will. But before I start, if you'd like to donate $1, I really appreciate it. But let's start with this poster right here during the Cairo Street of the Wars Columbia expedition in 1893, where it says Cairo Street in Egypt, right? Egypt. Let's see this building. Let's take a good look at this building right here. Take a good look. Here go the building right here in Chicago. But then I was told that if that's Cairo, Egypt, it should have camels. Because Egypt had camels. Oh, but let's go down this rabbit hole. What do you see? What do you see? What do you see, right? What do you see? And right here it says Chicago. Right here, Chicago. What do you see? What do you see? Do not play stupid. What do you see? So these are actors? No, so these are just actors, just acting, right? What do you see? Oh, okay, alright. What do you see? Another camel, right? What do you see? What do you see? Come on now. What do you see? Oh, we can keep going for days. Here go a camel, right? What do you see right there? What do you see? And not to mention that this was 100 to 500 blocks back. It looked like Egypt, but it says Cairo, right? Now we have the camels that everybody say camels were never in North America. Now stop me when I'm wrong. Stop me, right? When they two down on. Don't ever test Kenny. Don't ever test. Boy, don't ever test me. Don't ever test me, because I'm a guru on the history picks, boy. My library is big, bro. My library is big, bro. Don't ever test me.
Now, this thought-provoking discussion challenges the conventional wisdom that ancient Egypt was located in modern-day Africa. The idea that the biblical Egypt may have been situated in the Americas is a fascinating one, and the evidence presented is certainly intriguing. The analysis of the Nile River's description in the Bible, specifically the mention of 7 streams, raises questions about the accuracy of our current understanding of ancient geography. The fact that the modern African Nile only has 3 main tributaries, whereas the biblical account describes 7, suggests that there may be more to the story. The comparison between Chicago and Cairo is also noteworthy, with similarities in architecture and layout that cannot be easily dismissed. While this does not necessarily prove that Chicago is the ancient Cairo, it does highlight the need for further exploration and research. Now, these videos serve as a reminder that history is not always as clear-cut as we might think. New discoveries and perspectives can shed new light on our understanding of the past, and it's essential to approach these ideas with an open mind. So let's get into the research. Did the ancient Egyptians discover North America? Now, according to this article, it says that although the ancient Egyptian civilization tended to be confined to the valley of the Nile and was not known as a great seafaring people, it did carry out at least one extremely audacious voyage of discovery. Around 600 BC, an Egyptian expedition manned by Phoenician sailors circumnavigated Africa, traveling westward through the Mediterranean, through the Straits of Gibraltar, and then down along the coast of Africa, rounding the Cape and then turning northward towards the Red Sea and back home. It was an incredible feat considering these Egyptian sailors lacked compasses and were using primitive boats powered by oars and small sailors. Now, there is no specific mention of any Egyptian expedition to the New World, but there are some tantalizing clues that they may have reached it. There is also, of course, the uncanny similarity between Egyptian pyramids and the pyramids used by Aztecs and Mayans. Now, while this may only be a coincidence, it is noteworthy that similar coincidences are rare. For example, we do not find pyramids being used extensively in any other part of the world. Some scholars have also pointed out that there are some similarities between Aztec and Mayan legends and religious ideas and Egyptian concepts. The question is whether the Egyptians had any influence or whether these concepts developed independently in different parts of the world. But the most telling clue that the Egyptians may have reached North America comes in the form of the cocaine mummies. Cocaine is made exclusively from the cocoa plant, and as far as we can tell, this plant does not grow outside of South America. Yet chemical analysis of the ingredients used to embalm some Egyptian mummies shows the unmistakable and unexplainable presence of coke. Now, the same analysis has detected the presence of nicotine derived from the tobacco plant, which was not imported to Europe and Africa until after Columbus. Now, if the only source for coke and nicotine was the New World, then it means that somehow there was a trade link between Egypt and the Americas, thousands of years before Columbus. However, some critics believe that the tests may have been flawed because of hoax contamination of the samples, or that, if genuine, the substances come from plants which used to be native to Egypt, but which have somehow been destroyed out. Now, the idea that the Egyptians might have traded the North America is too difficult to accept. Now, I know this is a lot to take in for some, and it can be challenging to consider the idea that everything we thought we knew about ancient history might be turned upside down. But after watching the first video where they explored the description of the Nile River in the Bible and the possibility that it may not match the modern-day African Nile, and the second video where we saw the striking similarities between Chicago and Cairo, I have to ask, what do you, my viewers, think? Can you see the possibility that ancient Egypt we've been taught about may have actually existed in the Americas? Perhaps you are intrigued by the idea but need more evidence to fully convince you. Whatever your thoughts are, I encourage you to keep an open mind and consider the possibilities. History is complex and it's okay to question what we've been taught. So let's continue to explore and discuss these ideas together by sharing your thoughts in the comments below. What are your thoughts? What are your contributions? What are your views? Thank you for always watching, and see you in my next video as I bring you another interesting video.
Okay, there you have it. All right, now I'm going back over here to When Rocks Cry Out by Brother Horace Butler, and we're still in the 3rd chapter, and we're going over here to page 18. He states the following: the map was famed impossible. Details about the Americas that it showed. It even revealed the Pacific Ocean before it was rediscovered by Europeans who had lost knowledge of the Americas after being expelled from the Western Hemisphere during the Dark Ages. Waldseemüller admitted he had gotten information to make the map of the Americas from works left by ancient Egypt. Waldseemüller removed the name America when he published the map again. Some believe Waldseemüller had been forced to remove the name that Egypt had given to the Americas, along with other curiously accurate details about when it states here the New World. Of course, we already told you that this is the old world, not the new. The Illuminati wasted no time debating whether the name America was taken from the name of the explorer Amerigo Vespucci. Those enlightened ones knew that the Vespucci lie was a ruse to hide the secret about Egypt and its naming of the Americas. Their strategy of silence had kept the forbidden secrets intact, even when strangers had happened upon pieces of the secret. But now Isaiah's prophecy was beginning to breed. A storm was gathering. Cries from ancient stones in Egypt were rising through the old valleys of the dead and up to the clouds. Rocks were crying out a secret that thundered and trembled through even anointed men who could not make their mouths say the secret. The gatekeepers were scrambling desperately to restore the seal on secrets they thought they had buried forever. They thought they had destroyed Christianity with a man called Da Vinci and a supposed code. Now it was Christianity's turn and Isaiah's turn to unleash the real secret behind the real code. All right? Now, let's take a look and see what the brother got to say for himself. Okay? Let's listen to Brother Horace Butler himself, so he can tell you a little bit about it himself. All right? So let me roll on down here and find this here business here. And we'll be rolling right along. Plenty of time on the clock. I really didn't think I was going to be able to squeeze it all in. But it seems that I did. That I am being able to do it. And I'm also going to deal with how this confusion came about and who's responsible for it. We're going to get down into that too. Okay? So y'all hold on. Here we go.
The Americans going to invade the Aztecs. And so he was the one that led the invasion of the the black nation that was there that we now call Aztec, but he was writing what he saw. These were not really letters. They were narratives of what he saw and what was going on and what they were doing as well. But he was writing about the mosque that he saw. He was writing about the barber shops that he saw, how fine these barbers were. And he was talking about the Moorish dress that they wore. The clothing was Moorish, and the buildings were Moorish in architecture. And when he crossed on the top of the mountain to invade the land, to come down to this capital of the Aztecs, he was at the top of the mountain. He looked down and he made this strange remark. He says, "And there lies far-flung Venus." That doesn't mean very much to many people, but it meant a lot to me. I was familiar with Venus over on that side of the ocean and that city sitting on that water, and I knew what he was saying. Here was a city built on canals with ships all around it, and it's this African city there with the Moorish architecture built on the design of a Venus. And later I understood that's exactly what it was. He started describing the city. Here's this marvelous African city sitting on a man-made island in a man-made sea where Mexico City stands right now. And you've got this black man. If you've ever seen this piece of art called the Moorish Chief, I'm going to tell you right now, they said they don't know who that man is modeled after, but when you understand the descriptions of Montezuma, this African that they call Montezuma, you will see that Moorish chief and you will be looking exactly at Montezuma. He is fitting every description that they gave, and then he has this little secret thing about it. When you look on his head, you see he's got this white cowl on his head, and underneath that white cowl is a little small red cap. Now, they'll try to say that's about the assassins or the assassins. No, you got to understand, Mexico is Lower Egypt. That's where Memphis was, and when you're the king of Memphis, your crown is red. And I'm thinking they're trying to show him secretly that this is Montezuma. They said Montezuma is this medium-built man, and they talked about the beard that he has that's shaped, and they're talking about he's black, and then others said very dark-complected. And I'm looking at the Moorish chief, and I'm not seeing anything that does not agree with the descriptions that they give of Montezuma. And I'm saying, well, now we got a problem. Aztecs are Indians. That's what I was told. But now I've got Martha Malaku's education under my belt, and in the book of Ivan van Sertima, he talks about those two expeditions, those two voyages of ships that came out of Senegambia. He's talking about those 500 ships and those 2,000 ships that went across in 1306 and again in 1311 looking for the first group of ships, or about those years. Now, we have those ships coming across the Atlantic from West Africa, and then they say there is no record of what happened to them, except now I'm in the Americas. I'm at Mexico. I'm looking in the records that the friars put together when they talked to these Africans there whose histories were being destroyed as soon as they took over that land. They were just burning them in the street, piling up the books. And yet here's this friar, here's this Bernardino Sahagún who's come in and he's earned their trust, and they said, well, we got a couple of books they didn't get. And so he's recreating the histories that Spain and the church thought they had destroyed. And so he's rewriting them all over again. And he's showing these Aztecs as blacks with African features. And now it gets a little better, because he's also talking about the conversation that Montezuma had with Cortez. And now here is Cortez also putting in his journal the conversation he had with Montezuma. And here's Castillo. He's putting in the conversation that Cortez had with Montezuma. And here are these other writers, and they're putting in this conversation that Montezuma is having with Cortez. And I thought it was unbelievable that Montezuma is sitting right there, this black African in this Moorish clothing with this little red cap on, because he's really the king of Memphis. And he's sitting there and he says, well, you know, my father and my grandfathers say that we are not of this land. He said very clearly to Cortez, we are strangers here. We come across that sea in ships, and we landed at the city of Panuco, right south of Texas, and we came in, and people really didn't want to have much to do with us, but we found out how to work politics, and we started making some alliances, and before they knew it, we had become the most powerful group, and now we are the powerful group, and then we came and we found this island and built our capital on it in 1325 A.D. Now, we have 500 ships and then 2,000 ships leaving out of West Africa. In 1306, 1311, they're crossing the Atlantic. Nobody knows what happened to them. And here the Aztecs are saying, and we arrived about that same time in our ships coming from over there where the sun rise. And we came in, and now they're being painted in their books as blacks, as Africans. And so the white scholars who then got control started explaining things, and they started saying things like, well, you know, when they came in, they started looking for the symbol of a cactus with an eagle standing on the cactus clutching a serpent in its claw. That's, I wish I could tell you what that really was, but that's not the truth. These Africans already knew that other, and now they were looking for that other West African nation called Memphis. And the symbol of Memphis was because Upper Egypt, the eagle, had defeated the Lower Egypt, which was the symbol of the serpent, and Dan was the serpent, like the Dan people in West Africa. And so the symbol of the United Kingdom was this serpent being held in the claw of this eagle. And they knew at Memphis that symbol would be there. And when they found that island with those columns broke down and with these symbols of Egypt on it, they knew where they were. And they started rebuilding Memphis, the capital city that they now call Tenochtitlan. The Aztec capital actually is an African capital built on the top of ancient Memphis, the other West African capital that was built there in Mexico. So here we go. So now we have the understanding that Martha Malaku had given me from Ivan Van Sertima's book about these ships coming over. Now we've got Hernan Cortez's letters talking about the conversation with Montezuma saying, and we arrived in these ships, not across the Pacific from the Orient, as so many professors try to tell you now. He said we came across that one where the sun rises. We came from that direction and came over. Well, Asia's not over there. Africa is over there. So now we have these Africans coming in. Now here's the deal. Hernando Cortez stops by the Yucatan Peninsula before he comes in, and he picks up a woman to help translate so he can know the secret language and know what they're going to do, and she's going to interpret it for him. Poor sister tore up the African nations with what she did, but she did it for a reason. They had expelled her from this city some years before, took her from grace, disgraced her, and now she wanted revenge. And so they recruited her, and she came in, and she was telling them everything they were saying secretly that they thought Cortez and these Spaniards could not understand. But they kept calling this woman Marina. But really, they were also calling her Malinche. And it wasn't until I got another piece of understanding that was coming out of West Africa that says, when you talk about Mandinka, the Fulani called them Malinche. They were calling this woman Mandinka the entire time. Malinche. Malinche, what they say. Malinche, do this. She's a Mandinka. She has come from Mexico City, where these other Africans were building their capital city on that island. So now we have Fulani in the area, we have Mandinka in the area, we have the book showing them as blacks and with African features, We have Montezuma saying we arrived in ships coming from across the Atlantic. And we came in the 1300s and built this capital in 1325, just a few years after those ships left out of West Africa. Oh, we have Africans now. And then it got very, very nice when I found these forbidden histories that they wrote, that the Bernardino Sahagún put back together, that they had destroyed, and then they confiscated these records and kept them in a monastery for about 300 years, hid them, and finally they came back out. But he had recreated the histories of the Americas. And here this friar was writing what these Africans were telling them about the history, and they said, well, you have to understand that even the Olmacs, when they came over, you know, they came with this pharaoh, and they call him Tarhaka, but we know Tarhaka's name when we hear it, even if they change the T to an N. There's Tarhaka is Tarhaka, and he's dead, and he's coming to be buried in this area. But they said that the man that's leading this expedition is the African whose name is Meshi, M-E-C-I. And now we have the meaning of Mexico, because they were first called after this African, the land of Meshi, and the land of is, of course, Ko and Ka and Ta and those kinds of terms. And so Mexico, Meshi's land became Mexico, and now we say Mexico. It's named after that African, Meshi. And there it was in the records that this friar, Bernardino Sahagún, had assembled. That's why they were called the Forbidden Histories. Blacks were never to know these again. So now we're in Mexico. We have that part. But then the Aztecs say, but all these pyramids there in the nearby great city, right here beside us, we don't know who built those, and I want to know who they were. Well, I've got the West Africans in, but now we've got some pyramids that's looking a lot like Egypt. So I went and asked Egypt. I started checking their records to ask them, do y'all know anything about the Americas? Have you written anything? I mean, if you build a city like Heliopolis in the Americas, I figure you're going to write about it. And they did. And I saw so much in those records. One of the first things I saw were the writings that said, you know what, and we would go to this great pyramid, and we would ascend the double staircase and receive our crown as pharaoh. Well, the Great Pyramid on the Nile in Northeast Africa doesn't have stair steps going up it. It doesn't have temples on top of its summits. They could not go and break through the boat on the temples atop those Great Pyramids. There are none there. And that was the clue that Egypt was writing about the Americas.
Okay, there you have it. It's still standing today, right down there in South America. All you got to do is check it out. Well, let's take a look at, we've been exposed to things down here now.
Just like your question, as if I'm doing something wrong by not basing my identity and my worldview and my understanding on the dysfunctional reductionist definition of white American. I mean, look, for most of the people who are categorized as Americans and who claim American history as their history, who feel some sort of, connection to the so-called founding fathers, Paul Revere and what have you, most of them only have even been over there for 2 or 3 generations. A smaller number than that's been over there for 4 generations, and very few, except for the descendants of slaves, have been over there since the beginning. The overwhelming majority of so-called Americans throughout most of American history, their families were somewhere else. It's the same with mine. The Irish side of my family came over during the potato famine, and the German side came over more recently than that. Yet for some reason, we're all supposed to believe that we are all somehow connected to the history and the cultural heritage of that country, connected to people that we're not connected to in any way whatsoever, as if they are our ancestors. They even call them our forefathers. What do I have to do with George Washington? America isn't a tribe. America is nothing but a blood-soaked piece of land that a ragtag horde of Europeans fled to escape Europe. And then it became a land that people fled to escape American foreign policy that pillaged their own countries. And the people that have undeniably been so-called American longer than 99% of so-called Americans, the descendants of African slaves, are still treated like outsiders in a country that they've been in longer than most people. They've been there at least as long as the most pedigreed aristocratic so-called Mayflower families. I mean, just on seniority alone, they're supposed to be among the highest status citizens of that country.
Malcolm X once said, "You are not an American, you are a victim of American." Shade Bolson came and said that American is not an ethnicity, American is a conditioning. Well, I know from just saying the two phrases from these two enigmatic people, especially in the contribution of what black people is going through, especially for the late Malcolm X, and today we are having Shade Bolson, which also I'm going to feature in this video. And you are going to see how they are describing the United States, how their lenses, his lenses after staying in the United States for a number of times, he can come clearly out and also say this about the United States. And it's not about what he's been saying, but this is just the truth of what is really happening. And he talks about some important things that I believe that people need to hear out. And I'm also going to be talking about some things which are really, really important, and historical oppressions which have been happening to black people in regards to what is called the American dream, which people have always been sold to. So if you join me in today's presentation, it's going to be an eye-opening presentation by this white professor, Shade Bolson. And he is Arabic, but he's white. He is white Arab, right? So while that's not an issue, the issue is the message that he shares with people. He shares with people from the black community. That's the most important thing. And I hope that we get to see the United States in its lenses. And why am I presenting this video to you? I'm presenting this video to you to also showcase that sometimes what you believe is not what really happens. And this video is also important to people who have always taken the United States as a mighty, who has always taken the United States as something which is big. I understand the United States is one of the superpowers that you are having, but with time, it's losing its ground. The United States is losing its ground, and people are really coming out and talking about this. And I hope that you've seen a lot of people complaining about the cost of living, about the health issues of people who are in the United States, and a couple number of things. Well, that is not just that. These information highlights some things that people need to know, especially people from the black community. And here to me today, I'm going to present you and tell you why the United States is conditioning. I see that it's not a safe place to be. And I've talked to people, I've tried appealing to people that if they can, they could live and, seek to go somewhere else. The cost of living, the inflation, with a number of things which have been happening in the country. While we're going to look at the political stance, why the United States is not an ethnicity. While, being an American is not an ethnicity, but it is being conditioned. So let's jump right into the video, and I'll come back with my commentary. I hope that this video that I'm going to present to you will help you. And this is just an appeal just before watching the video. There are some videos that I can't post on this platform because of censorship. Also adhering with the YouTube policies. So if you'd like to see videos which are exclusively that important, but due to policies they can't be allowed in the platform, we am having a Patreon. If you go to my bio, you'll go see the Patreon account, and you can join, because soon I'll be posting videos which are exclusively for educational purposes, but really important, but at the same time sensitive, right? So let's dive right into the video. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's dive right into it.
As if you're from there, but you are a white American after all. How do you reconcile that?
Well, I say our people, and I say our countries, with regards to the Muslims and the Muslim lands, because I'm a Muslim. The history of the Muslims is my history.
The Muslims are my family. That's my nation. The Ummah is my nation. Being American isn't a citizenship. It's a condition. And once you realize that you have that condition, you can spend the rest of your life trying to recover from it. It's like PTSD. You have American dissonance syndrome. And if you reach adulthood and you're still patriotic, you have the most profound case of Stockholm Syndrome imaginable, because that society has deeply, deeply wronged you. I mean, when you say that someone is an American, basically you're saying that they were an abused child, psychologically abused, emotionally abused, mentally abused, educationally abused, and abused in every other kind of way. You've been lied to. You've been programmed with dysfunction. Your intellect has been systematically degraded. Your intellectual and your moral depth has been deliberately depleted to make you shallow. Cognitive dissonance has been inflicted on you your whole life. When you say American, you may just as well say damaged or victimized. You come from a country that has a fabricated national identity around a set of values and principles it never, ever applied anywhere. And in fact, more often than not, only ever applied the opposite. You live in a country that is demonstrably and obviously an authoritarian oligarchy, but which you have been taught since childhood is a democracy. No one living in America today has lived under any administration that wasn't guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity, committed both abroad and on domestic soil. And you've been brainwashed into thinking that your country stands for freedom and justice. But it's sick. Your education system is based on the Prussian system of indoctrination to turn every student into an obedient, conformist slave to power. But you pretend that your society cherishes individuality. They've done nothing but damage you. Your schools have damaged you. Your media has damaged you. Your entertainment, your fake history, your myths, your government have done nothing but damage you all your life. That's what it means to be an American. And part of that damage, one aspect of that relentless damage, is in the question itself. You're a white American, you said. That matters to you. And you force it to matter to everyone in that country, even though it's an actually completely irrelevant characteristic. But because of the way that you have developed as a so-called society, you made it relevant. And you made it an issue. And you insist on keeping it an issue. So you can never escape. I don't even get to make it irrelevant to me because of the racial history in America. The whole context of race in the United States is a self-perpetuating death spiral that never dies. You assign value to all of these characteristics that are actually the least valuable characteristics that a human being can have. I mean, why race? Why skin color and not eye color or hair color? Why not height? It's incredibly arbitrary and stupid. But you did what you did. You drew the lines where you drew the lines, and you sentenced whole segments of humanity to imprisonment within these shallow, superficial, meaningless definitions, which then created a long, disgraceful history of actual experience that millions upon millions of people have suffered for no reason. So everyone who grew up in America eventually has to pursue self-rehabilitation, deprogramming, repair, debugging, detoxification, just to try to undo all the damage that being American has done to them, just so they can try to be normal. To be American is to suffer from a multitude of chronic diseases. It's a condition, not a nationality. It's a condition that every serious and sincere person has to try to cure themselves of over the course of their adulthood. But for most of them, it's a terminal condition. They'll never get over it. They'll die that way. And the sickest part of it is that this condition, you're actually pressured to preserve it, to uphold it, to cherish it, rather than to abolish it. Just like your question, as if I'm doing something wrong by not basing my identity and my worldview and my understanding on the dysfunctional, reductionist definition of white American. I mean, look, for most of the people who are categorized as Americans and who claim American history as their history, who feel some sort of, connection to the so-called founding fathers, Paul Revere and what have you. Most of them only have even been over there for 2 or 3 generations. A smaller number than that's been over there for 4 generations, and very few, except for the descendants of slaves, have been over there since the beginning. The overwhelming majority of so-called Americans throughout most of American history, their families were somewhere else. It's the same with mine.
The Irish side of my family came over during the potato famine, and the German side came over more recently than that. Yet for some reason, we're all supposed to believe that we are all somehow connected to the history and the cultural heritage of that country, connected to people that we're not connected to in any way whatsoever, as if they are our ancestors. You know, they even call them our forefathers. What do I have to do with George Washington? America isn't a tribe. America is nothing but a blood-soaked piece of land that a ragtag horde of Europeans fled to escape Europe. And then it became a land that people fled to escape American foreign policy that pillaged their own countries. And you know, the people that have undeniably been so-called American longer than 99% of so-called Americans, the descendants of African slaves, are still treated like outsiders in a country that they've been in longer than most people. They've been there at least as long as the most pedigreed aristocratic so-called Mayflower families. I mean, just on seniority alone, they're supposed to be among the highest status citizens of that country. Their ancestors sacrificed more by force and for more generations than anyone living in America today. But until now, they have to fight just to be given equal rights and equal opportunities on par with people who just got off the boat 3 generations ago, 2 generations ago, 1 generation ago, or yesterday. Now, let's not even talk about the indigenous people, because of course let's not talk about them. They're never to be spoken of. But somehow we're all Americans. This abstract, fabricated identity that everyone is just supposed to believe in and unthinkingly adopt. Because if you didn't, you might actually notice how abstract and how fabricated it is. You know, when it comes to some sort of national identity, country-based, geographically based identity, politically based identity, everyone accepts the idea that you can become integrated into a history that isn't yours. That, for instance, your family can immigrate to the U.S. in the 20th century or the 19th century or the 21st century and get citizenship, and then suddenly you have Abraham Lincoln in your family tree. Everyone accepts that as rational. But when it comes to Islam, for some reason you can't accept it. You can't accept that becoming Muslim connects you to the continuum of Muslim lives, stretching back all the way through the followers of all the prophets. You can't accept that becoming a Muslim makes you a member of a nation based on belief, even though belief in so-called American values and the American Constitution is supposedly what makes you, or what makes an immigrant an American. You know, an Italian American, a Greek American, a Haitian American, everyone. Everyone recognizes and everyone accepts that those people, immigrants, feel a connection to and still derive their identity from their home country. But being a Muslim American isn't supposed to be like that. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Roosevelt, Kennedy, all of these men who never believed in or practiced the values that you're supposed to revere them for are supposed to mean more to you than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, more than the Sahaba, more than all of the Muslims throughout history all over the world who believed in and practiced and lived by the values that you as a Muslim also believe in, practice, and live by. No, sorry. I do not identify with...
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to conclude this series, part 1 and 2. I was able to get everything in, and I hope you got something out of here. I hope we change some minds out there, and you learn some things about it. The Moors and the Egyptians and in the Americas, because I've been preaching this gospel for quite some time. And so here it is. I've done the best I could. And keep in mind, don't forget to subscribe to my channel right over there on YouTube. I'll be converting this over tonight. While y'all in there sleeping, I'll still be up working. Nevertheless, I've been your host, Tarhaka Amana L. Bay, and y'all have a good evening.
Bye.
School is back in session, Florida. With precious cargo on board, school buses need extra care from motorists. Florida drivers are reminded to drive carefully, obey all speed limits, and never use their phone while driving in a school zone and around school buses. Learn more at flhsmv.gov/child-safety. That's flhsmv.gov/child-safety. A message from the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles.
Recovering from a slip and fall accident takes time. But at Farah & Farah, we take care of everything you need and stay focused on your case around the clock. So you have more time to focus on getting back to your health, getting back to your family, and getting back to your life. Farah & Farah, here to make it easy. Jacksonville.